Hey everyone, it's Quinn here. I know you all probably want to get to the episode, but I felt that given the films we're going to talk about today, this needed something of a content warning. The ABCs of Death trilogy deals with some extreme and upsetting subject material, and it's unfortunately not always sensitive about how it does it. Put simply, there's a lot of shock value horror in this series, and the content we'll be discussing is definitely deserving of a trigger warning. If you're sensitive to extreme violence and sexuality, body horror, bulimia, rape, abortion, conversion therapy, domestic abuse, animal abuse, suicide, fascist imagery, bizarre fetishes, feces, pedophilia, and necrophilia, please skip this episode and come back in 2 weeks when we'll be dealing with much tamer territory. If you're still here, thank you for understanding, and enjoy the episode.
You know Macumba? Voodoo. Granddad was a priest in Trinidad. He used to tell us, when there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk here.
What we are dealing with here is a perfect engine.
What's your favorite scary movie?
It doesn't feel pity or remorse or fear, and it absolutely will not stop until you are dead.
I can't lie to you about your chances. You have my sympathies.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to Sometimes They Come Back. I am Quinn Bailey.
And I am Max Corman.
And thank you for putting up with our brief hiatus there, but we are back this time for real.
Well,
seriously, guys.
The great thing about the name Sometimes They Come Back is you don't know when sometimes is. We haven't established really a clear order of release. We should. But, if we'll pop in and out of your life, just like, I don't know, Jesus.
Or any good horror franchise. I was going to say any good horror
that
franchise, but
is,
you went straight for Jesus.
I mean, that was probably, your option was probably better, was probably more relevant, I should say.
Jesus is always relevant, Max.
Beautiful. I'm Jewish.
I know. Anyways,
Great
today's
start.
episode is going to be a little bit interesting because we're not really dealing with your usual kind of franchise like we've seen with our last two installments. We're dealing with what is technically a trilogy, but is also 72 separate movies.
It's a duology, but it's technically a trilogy with like bonus features.
It's a duo-and-a-half-ology.
Because the third movie is not even on Letterboxd.
Yeah, it is
wild.
not. It's just a series of shorts.
Yeah.
Finally, stopping beating around the bush, we are going to be covering today the ABCs of Death. Duology, trilogy, I don't know the word for what we can call it.
The anthology trilogy. What do you call it? 72 movie trilogy. 72 shorts.
A septiduology? I think it's probably a septiduology. I don't know what the words for this is, and I'm not going to check, because we do not have as much time today, because like I said, we have 72 short films
I'm
to
sorry,
go over.
wait, we have 78. What are we talking about?
Wait, 70? Okay, I've done the math wrong, and it's 78.
Should we just restart?
No,
Okay.
we're rolling with this. We're rolling with this.
Okay, yes, we have 78 shorts, not 72, but at least 6 of them are not worth watching, at least.
Yeah. Little backstory on this. This is a anthology series with basically a series of different directors, and the basic premise is that the creators of this anthology gave each director who was involved in it a different letter of the alphabet and said to them, okay, you make a short for us, it has to fit into a feature that's going to have 26 parts, and it has to involve death. So each short involves somebody dying, and that is the base level premise that every single director in this is given to work off of.
Great family movie night project. It is a fun project because, when Quinn and I were in film school, we all made movies, and like freshman year we all did horror movies, and I was like, hey, what if we put them all together and make our own feature anthology film? We never did that, but we should have.
We should have. That would have been fun.
Just
honestly.
like a really, really cheap student film anthology, The
Yeah.
one I would have put in, my vampire movie, because I did a vampire movie. Shout out to Riley Nickel, the vampire. No, it was Ethan. Ethan was the vampire. Riley was the victim.
I remember shooting that. I remember getting yelled at by somebody because we were shooting too late.
Oh, we weren't yelled at. Just long story.
We weren't yelled at, but they did call safety on us.
Yeah, after we.
It was an
A
ordeal.
story for another time.
It was a story for another time, specifically not an episode with 78 separate movies we're going to be covering.
Right, like it's funny because this was only being 3 movies. This was the fastest we were able to watch a franchise because it was just like 3 different nights we can watch them. But we have a lot more to talk about just because of how much content there is.
Yeah. And I already recorded a warning for this, but just to reiterate, this episode in particular is going to deal with a lot of very disturbing and very sensitive subject material. A lot of these films are very much shock value driven, and they get to some very extreme territory. So if you skipped the warning at the start of this episode, you have been warned.
Yeah.
A lot of messed up shit.
This definitely has stuff that's like, have we triggered you yet? Huh? Are you upset? Is this uncomfortable? Like, I mean, I guess.
Yeah, that's how a lot of shock
kind of
value
annoying.
honestly goes.
Yeah, it's like it's like I don't care. You're just trying too hard.
It's funny because 2 weeks after this, our next episode is going to be the Saw movies, and after these, the Saw movies are like, oh, that's cute. That's very tame. Like, these movies kind of do make Saw look a little straightforward.
I saw 1 at least, but that's,
Saw 1 at least, but
we'll talk about that
We'll
later.
talk about that 2 weeks from now.
I'm excited. We're going to see Spiral tonight. First movie in a year and a half.
In a theater.
In a
and
theater.
we are very excited. And we will be covering Spiral as part of next week's episode on Saw. So we will have, as of the moment, a complete coverage of the entire Saw franchise, including the most recent installment, which is going to be fun for us, honestly.
So remember to like, share, and subscribe. So to make our franchise watching have a little more value than just entertaining ourselves. Let our opinions be heard throughout the land.
And with that, I think we're ready to take on ABCs of Death 1, released in 2012, directed by a lot of people. And we're going to just start at the start of the alphabet with our first short, A is for Apocalypse, directed by Nacho Vigalondo.
Yeah, so the only other Nacho movie I've seen was, we saw, it was Colossal.
And Colossal's good. I really like Colossal.
Colossal's good. I wasn't a big fan of this short. It's kind of, it's one of the, there's a few of these, but it's like, just the premise of the movie isn't really revealed until the very end. So what it is a guy's in bed, and then his wife, I guess, or daughter,
his wife,
comes in, starts beating him up, hitting him with pans,
trying to kill him.
The guy isn't dying easily, and then
the twist is that, oh yeah, the wife has been planning this as part of a murder plot, but she doesn't have time because the apocalypse is happening, hence the title, A is for Apocalypse. It's kind of one of the many shorts we're going to get into in this series where it's just, the point of the short is that the ending reveals what they're going for with the letter, and that's kind of it. Like, I like Nacho Vigalondo as a director. I've actually seen him talk about film. He seems very passionate about it. Colossal's good. I really like that movie. I don't think this is his strongest work. I think it's just a little too limited.
I just don't get, just on a plot-wise, like, if it's the apocalypse, why is she trying to murder him? There's a lot that's just not answered, which is fine for a short, but like,
yeah.
It's
really,
really...
very short. It's kind of like more of a vignette than it is like a short film with a full story.
Yeah, it was definitely just to watch a person get murdered, and then...
Well, nobody actually specifically dies in the short.
No, doesn't he die? I don't even...
He doesn't die. He's still alive at the end of the short.
This might be the only one where someone doesn't die.
This is the ABCs of Death, and already we're off to a start where nobody dies. Very auspicious start here.
Alright,
Anyways.
B is for Bigfoot.
B is for Bigfoot, directed by Adrian Garcia Bogliano.
I've seen one of his movies. He did Late Phases, which was about a blind guy, veteran, in a retirement home, and then werewolves come, and he has to fight them and do Home Alone stuff. It was fun, if I remember. I really liked it.
I'll probably watch that. I like werewolf movies.
And I'm also a big fan of Bigfoot movies, which disappointed me because this is
there is no Bigfoot in this.
There's no Bigfoot, which made me very upset.
It's
not very.
It's just a very simple slasher story. It's babysitters telling a kid to go to sleep by telling them a scary story about the abominable snowman, which is a Yeti, not a Bigfoot. So we're already off to a troubling start because that's not a Bigfoot. But then a serial killer breaks into the house and murders the babysitters, and the kid thinks it's a Bigfoot, and that's kind of it. Like, honestly, that's kind of the whole story.
Yeah, I mean, it's very much it opens with like they just want to have sex or something in the other room. That's why
it's a slasher, Max.
Yeah.
They want to have sex because it's a slasher, and that's what their instinctual urges as slasher characters make them want to do.
They had the ability to be creative with the kid's perspective, thinking it's Bigfoot, but they didn't do anything with it. It was kind of disappointing. Not a fan.
It's a little too long too. It kind of feels like it stretches it out a bit, honestly. But it's technically polished. There's some decent cinematography. I like some of the ideas. It's like, it's not terrible. It's just kind of there. That's kind of a problem I have with a lot of these shorts. They're not terrible. They're not brilliant. A lot of them are just there. They kind of just exist. Less so, I'd say, in 2, but we're going to encounter that a lot in this movie, along with some other problems we will bring up later.
Yeah, next, when you want to start with
C is for Cycle, which is directed by Ernesto Diaz Espinosa. I do not believe I've seen any of this guy's films. And this one is a time loop movie where a guy goes through a time loop and things happen, and then he gets killed by his past self.
Yeah, it doesn't
or
make a whole
another
lot.
Future self. I'm not really sure what happens. It's a little bit incomprehensible. This kind of feels like... It's weird because this kind of feels like what I've heard about Nacho Vigalando's Time Crimes, which is kind of a similar thing.
Yeah.
So it seems weirdly similar to a film made by another director from the ABCs of Death.
Just 2 shorts ago, right?
And honestly, I'm not going to lie, this one was kind of a dud for me. It's just... It kind of has that nothing feeling I had with B is for Bigfoot, but it didn't have like the same production quality or thought behind it. It just felt like a very basic, confusing kind of time loop story that just doesn't really do anything new with this kind of concept.
Yeah, it kind of takes the looper-ish. It like repeating time, Groundhog's Day, Looper.
Yeah, but I like Looper. I really like Looper.
Yeah, but and the thing is, just in short form, it definitely came across... the first thing I thought, like halfway through, so not the first thing I thought was like student film is what it felt like. A lot of it didn't really follow a lot of its own rules, its own like time travel rules, which is a problem for some time travel movies. But
sometimes you can get away with this.
Sometimes you can, and
this time they did not.
This one, there's just not enough to care about. That I was just focusing on like this doesn't make any sense for your time travel plot because you're going against what you've established.
Yeah, I know they don't have a lot of time, but like at least make me care about the characters. Like at least do something that makes your characters interesting to me. Like,
so this one was bordering on obnoxious, but I do think that I will... this is still a director I'll watch more of his movies from, definitely.
It just kind of bored me.
Yeah. D
is for Dogfight by Marcel Sarmiento. I have not watched any of his stuff, but this one was actually pretty good. So this one takes the Dogfight title and pushes it into a very literal sense. It is a guy fighting a dog who has been basically forced to fight a dog, and then there's a actually pretty decent twist to it. And I actually really appreciate this one. This one does deal with our first instance of really dark territory, which is kind of animal abuse, but the animals were not harmed during it, and there's a good ending, and it's probably one of the most stylized.
Oh, it's super stylized. It's like a music video. Almost.
It's got very music video editing, lots of slow motion, lots of soft focus. It is a very distinct visual style. It tells a contained and satisfying small story. It has a very good dog, and it's just satisfying. It's like probably one of the standouts of the first film because in terms of style, in terms of execution, it's one of the strongest.
Well, yeah, I actually very much like this one. I thought it was really well shot, really well edited. Looks great. It's got I love it when, like, spoiler alert, I guess, dog gets revenge.
It's a revenge movie where the real protagonist is essentially the dog.
And I will say...
Very reminiscent of Bad Moon, which is a very underrated werewolf movie.
I love Bad Moon. I read the book because I like that movie so much. The only problem I would have with this one would be... It might go on a tad long if I'm looking for nitpicks.
Yeah.
The other nitpick would just be like, I feel like the dog. So the twist is like the guy is fighting a dog, like a weird dog fighting thing.
And it's his dog that's been stolen.
Like I feel like I would have liked if the dog recognized him the whole time because dogs recognize their owners. But
yeah,
maybe. But No, it was very satisfying when they recognized each other finally and then teamed up to go against the bad guys. And
we need more dog revenge movies. It's like John Wick if the dog got its revenge instead of John Wick.
Watch The Hills Have Eyes. That's got a
very good dog. That's a very good dog revenge movie.
Yeah.
We'll eventually talk about that. Eventually.
E is for Exterminate.
Oh boy. This one is directed by Angela Bettis. Angela Bettis is more known as an actress. She starred in May, which is a really good 2000s horror movie. She's appeared in sort of a bunch of other stuff. She's a very solid actress. This is unfortunately kind of a dud. It's a guy gets bitten by spiders and then spiders grow inside him. That's it.
It was kind of like that Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark short story, if you remember that.
Oh, I remember that
pimple,
one.
The red dot.
Yeah, but
this is
terribly shot, unfortunately. It is really badly shot.
So yeah, it's very badly shot. So I in this trilogy there are 2 spider shorts. I have arachnophobia to some degree, and this one, just did nothing for me. I was just like, it was kind of just like a bad YouTube sketch.
Yeah, just very underlit,
they had
very grimy.
No, yeah, I thought I remembered it being very flat looking.
Like very, very, we had a digital camcorder kind of photography.
Yeah,
that shows up later in this. This is not the worst offender, I think, for that. There is a much worse one later on. But it's just kind of a little ugly and gross, and it's a bit nothing. It's, unfortunately, because I really like Angela Bettis as an actress. Her performance in May is fantastic.
Was she the main character in May?
Yeah, she's the main character.
Fantastic.
She's so good in that movie. That's an excellent performance, and I kind of wish this was better than it was, but I can still respect her as an actress, honestly.
Right. I mean, it's a movie. It's a short all about the ending, and the ending was just like I've seen it before, and it was not
great CGI.
It was not great CGI. It was just not executed very well.
Yeah, it takes a lot for a movie about spiders for Max not to be scared of the spiders, and that should say all we need to say. Anyways, F is for fart. Oh God, here we go.
Yeah, I don't.
This is the one about a schoolgirl who has a fart fetish, has love with her teacher who farts, and then a fart apocalypse happens, and then look, I don't want to stereotype Japanese directors in this. Japanese cinema is a very wide and interesting field of cinema. However, this feels like a lot of Western stereotypes about what Japanese cinema is.
So I saw one of his movies. I saw Tomy Unlimited. We saw that.
Oh God, I like the ending of that one where it gets very Junji Ito imagery, but the rest of that movie is very wacky.
He's a wacky director. I don't.
Very chaotic.
Yeah.
Noboru Iguchi. I believe he might have started. Oh no, he started out as director. It's someone else I'm thinking of in this series who started out as a visual effects artist.
Yeah. So this one.
This one's just.
Is as
weird.
I mean, it's ABCs of Death, so I'm not looking for maturity, but this one was very much a.
Are you shocked yet? It's very. Are you shocked yet?
Why? My question was, just because you can, did you think you should?
Clearly, they did.
Didn't people start turning it? It's been a while because there's so many of these.
It's not zombies. I think it's just that they
stone
died.
Or something.
They just died, and then somebody gets sucked into a butt, and then it's just very. It's very immature. It's just very immature potty humor, weirdly fetishistic. It's just gonna become a running theme throughout the first movie. There's a lot of weird fetish shit in this movie. And look, I'm fine. If you're into that shit, that's fine. Please don't put it in this movie. Just
keep it to yourself.
Have some measure of privacy about yourself and personal space.
Other.
And just don't put your fetishes in this movie, please.
I will kink
we
shame
don't
you.
need you to share. I don't want to kink shame you, but I will kink shame you for this because it's not very good. You could have at least made it good. Hellraiser is 100% Clive Barker diving into his weird kinks, and Hellraiser's good. This isn't.
Yeah, this is something I would show as a joke just to make people uncomfortable.
I'm pretty sure this was made as a joke.
I would never show this.
This feels like it was made as a joke.
I would. There are very few people I'd recommend it to.
This also feels like it was definitely made by a director who formerly worked in porn, which I believe the director of this did work in porn, which makes a lot of sense considering the short.
Yeah, I did. At least I remember that one fairly
It's
well.
memorable.
Yeah,
I don't mean that as a compliment.
G is for Gravity. Okay, I was actually really enjoying this one at first. What it is it's all from first-person point of view, and it's a guy is very calm. He drives up to the beach, and then it's very beautiful scenery. He's on his surfboard, and he goes underwater. And I love underwater photography, so I was excited. And then it just ends, and I had no idea what happened.
Apparently, he drowns himself.
Apparently, I did not get that.
It kind of feels like it's a short where they're building up to like the reveal of the ending and the reveal of the letter. It feels like one of those, but the ending never happens. It's very unclear what happened. It's a little hard to follow. The photography is nice, and I like the first-person stuff, but it just goes nowhere.
It's really hard to defend watching a movie where the whole thing is, the story is a guy goes on a surfboard and drowns himself for no explained reason.
Yeah.
It's about 3 minutes long.
I think that's supposed to be a twist, but the way it's shot, I didn't really understand what was going on.
But even if that was a twist, it's like, I'm probably thinking of it too much from a feature film storytelling perspective, where I'm looking for more than just a visceral reaction, because the reaction they were going for was just you say, oh shit, anyways.
Yeah.
I was liking it until it just ended, and then I'm like, oh, you did nothing.
Again, it kind of just does nothing for me. That's kind of, a recurring problem. A lot of these just do nothing for me. The same cannot be said about H is for Hydroelectric Diffusion by Danish filmmaker Thomas Malling, which is... Okay, let's get this out of the way. This is the Nazi furry death porn one, where it's just it's a bulldog man who is horny for a fox woman, but the fox woman is a Nazi who tries to kill him, but then the ghost of Winston Churchill helps him kill her in extremely gory detail. And did I mention that the fox woman is nude? This one pissed me the fuck off, honestly. This is the dictionary definition of edgy bullshit.
I try to look for nuggets of gold and craft sometimes in movies, and the only thing I can see in this is it had some creative practical effects.
It has, at least, I will say, an attempt at style,
right?
Where at some points they are trying to do a very Tex Avery style. They're trying to do that Tex Avery style of very rowdy, raunchy, over the top, old cartoons in live action. But weirdly fetishistic again, very fetishistic, especially in the way it displays characters' death. That it's this literally fetishistic of dying in a way that feels very gross and uncomfortable.
Aggressively not my taste.
Again, I get it. This is some people's fetishes, but please really keep it at home, especially with the Nazi fetish. Really keep the Nazi fetish at home. And that's the
and
ultimate
don't make your
sign.
Death movie. It's it's a movie about death.
Yeah.
Why is
why are you being horny in this I say that there's a later short that actually does that interestingly and well, but not this one. Not this one, which pissed me the hell off, honestly. Yeah, why did this need to exist?
I recommend throwing this one into a volcano. I'm very sorry to everyone involved that I hate it so much, but it's just so aggressively not my taste.
It's literally a pastiche of those 70s Nazi exploitation movies. It's literally trying to be...
I hate those so much.
The fucking Ilsa movies. And those are movies I have sworn I am never going to watch. I have no desire to watch any of those Nazi sexploitation movies because there is nothing that is any less appealing to me than being horny for Nazis. Because fuck Nazis. Not in that way.
For all you furries, live your life, but keep it to yourself.
And if you're into Nazis, please don't be into that.
Please just don't.
Please, it's fine. It's fine. You guys keep it to yourselves. You mostly seem harmless.
Not the Nazi thing.
Not the Nazis. Don't do shit with Nazis. Okay, that goes for any group, not just furries. Okay.
Just on a fundamental level, I don't like this one.
Yeah,
Next is Eyes for Ingrown.
It's just so obviously shock value, and unfortunately that carries over to our next one, which is I is for Ingrown, which is a abusive husband slowly killing his wife.
While she does slam poetry over it.
Well, she does slam poetry over it. It's pretentious and just kind of depressing. Again, it's another big problem that comes up with this series. I'd say even more than just shorts being kind of nothing. It's just edginess for edginess' sake. There's a lot of shorts in this that feel like they're just throwing extreme and disturbing and triggering subject material at you in a way that doesn't really say anything, in a way that doesn't really feel interesting or calculated or doing something different. That it's just trying to scare you by pure shock alone. And I have a lot of problems with that approach. I think it's in a lot of ways, very indicative of a lack of creativity on filmmakers' parts, that they just feel like they have to not really rely on anything new. They just, okay, this works, we'll just throw it at them, instead of trying to do something new with that. It deeply frustrates me, and this just was really pretentious and ultimately very shallow take on a very serious issue.
And call us like hypocrites for enjoying the Saw movies, but at least that has some hilarious melodrama in it.
The Saw movies have wacky melodrama. They have crazy stuff, and then you have the movie where Jigsaw is literally making his entire death traps about how the American healthcare system is broken. So that's at least doing something
social
interesting.
Commentary occasionally. Yeah, I was not a fan of this one. It was also very much a nothing one. This one, my mind is kind of wandering just because it was like... it's just abuse, murder, and slam poetry. 3 things of which I do not love.
It's just trying to make you see how smart it is, unfortunately. And it's not. It's not very smart.
I'm sure the people who directed and wrote it are smart, but this was not a smart short.
Yeah, it's very frustrating.
Jay is
for Jidaigeki.
I really like this one.
Samurai movie. This is another Japanese short. This one is by Yudai Yamaguchi, who is a Japanese horror comedy director. I actually really like this one. This one's a very simple kind of sketch comedy premise executed well, which is basically a samurai is about to be executed and is trying to buy enough time to commit seppuku by making his executioner laugh by striking increasingly ridiculous and physically impossible faces. It's a very simple premise that is kind of a way to show off some decent, like, practical makeup effects, but it's enjoyable.
It's super stupid.
It's
clever,
dumb,
though.
but it's funny, and it has a good final punchline. It is a very good final punchline, and I'm not going to say what the punchline is.
No, I do, I don't... Another case of I don't know who I would recommend this to, but just after everything we saw, just having a fairly lighthearted, goofy, simple, but creative premise. I enjoy. It's from the writer... The director helped write Versus.
Oh,
I did not know that until I just saw
I
that.
really wish we could talk about we'll find an excuse to talk about Versus on this show, because Versus is one of my favorite weird Japanese cult films. It is basically a love child of Evil Dead, Highlander, and The Matrix made for basically no money, and it is delightful.
It's pretty awesome. I love that movie. So yeah, J is for Jidaigeki.
Yeah, Jidaigeki, and it's
AKA Samurai, which means
funny.
Movie.
It's solid, it's funny, it does a lot with a little. It doesn't try to go over the top with the premise. It's just, here's a funny little premise, we're going to do what we can with it, and we're out. I respect that simplicity.
There are going to be people there will be someone who goes on a recommendation, seeks that one out, watches it, and they're just like, what?
Very confused.
Like, it's just funny faces.
Remember, we're comparing this to a lot of the others. We just got through the Nazi furry porn one and the pretentious domestic abuse one. We needed this, okay?
It was a great breather. Next we have K for Klutz.
K is for Klutz, which is an animated short.
The first animated one.
Our first animated short of the series, which is a woman's attempt to flush her poop down the toilet, complicated by the fact that the poop does not want to be flushed down the toilet. It kind of is this weird mismatch of like a very gross subject material with this very cutesy, almost children's book art style. Pretty much the whole thing is dialogue free. It's a lot of physical comedy, very gross out, but it's well executed, honestly.
Yeah, it's well enough animated. It's I love it when you do visual storytelling like that. Yeah, I would recommend this as kind of like a gross out Mad TV short.
Yeah, it's definitely not for someone who likes gross out, but it's
most
decent
of these,
enough. It's well animated too.
Well, most of these I would not recommend to a lot of people just because of the subject material. But you know, if you're into weird animation, Ren and Stimpy kind of weird gross stuff, then you'll like this.
Yeah.
L.
Speaking of things we cannot recommend to most people, L is for libido. This one is the biggest frustration of this series, because this is directed by Timo Tjajanto, who is an Indonesian filmmaker.
Who I really like.
Who I really respect. Timo Tjajanto made
Night Comes for Us.
made The Night Comes for Us, which
Devil
is an
May Take You, 1, 2.
amazing martial arts film. It is an absolutely viscerally intense, very hardcore martial arts movie, and it is superb. He also co-directed Safe Haven, which we will talk about when we get to the VHS series. All you need to know for context is that Safe Haven is one of the best segments in any anthology movie. It is co-directed with Gareth Evans, who created the Raid movies, and it is intense. It is terrifying. It is awesome.
Yeah, it's great.
L is for libido. Timo Tjajanto's short for this is probably the worst thing I've seen by him, and it's deeply frustrating. It is kind of like a Saw kind of death trap thing, except the death traps are literally based around a masturbation competition, where it is two guys trying to masturbate to completion in a race, and whoever loses gets killed.
And it's just
Lovely.
like progressively...
It gets progressively worse, worse, quote unquote, where they start throwing people who are non-conventionally attractive out. They start throwing people with physical deformities or physical disabilities. At one point, they try to make them masturbate to a kid, and
that is like, no.
Yeah. The problem with it is just, I really respect Timo Tjajanto. This, I believe, is the first work he made on his own, not as part of the Mo Brothers, but this isn't great. It's just needlessly edgy, shot really weirdly flat. Like,
really, I thought I thought the one saving grace I was going to say about it is, I guess, the performance and the...
I wouldn't say cinematography. I'd say production design. It has some decent production design.
But yeah, just
it just feels, again, like needless shock value and frustratingly edgy.
He had to be to write that, you have to be in a place in your head where you're just trying to see how controversial you can get without getting like an NC-17.
And fortunately, his films really do improve after this one.
Oh, yeah.
It feels, in a way, it feels like with this, he got it out of his system. He then moves on to Safe Haven, which is a much better horror short.
I highly recommend the May the Devil Take You duology.
I am going to watch those at some point.
Very Evil Dead.
But I respect him a lot for this, but Timo, what were you thinking, man? I don't know what. I really respect you as a filmmaker, but this is frustrating.
Just on a fundamental level.
Yeah.
It
always hurts when a filmmaker you really like lets you down.
Yeah, I don't want anyone to watch this one.
Next is M is for Miscarriage, which is from
stupid.
Ty West, who is the director of House of the Devil. This is about a woman trying to flush a miscarried fetus down the toilet. That's it. That's literally
30 seconds.
It's like 30 seconds, really cheaply shot. It's like, it feels like Ty West was like, oh god, I gotta do something for these guys. Let me throw this out.
Like he forgot to do his homework and he did it in class.
Yeah, this is kind of the turning the book report in at the last moment short, unfortunately. And yeah, it's kind of nothing. It is the most nothing of all the nothing shorts.
And I guess, I mean, is that, without getting too political, like, is that a death scene? If it is an abortion a death? I might edit this part out because it's a little dark, but like...
Yeah, we're not diving into the abortion debate. Right here. But yeah, we're more concerned with the fact that this short isn't very good. We're not going to discuss abortion.
Yes.
Until we have to discuss abortion again, because I think there are other shorts that involve abortion.
Are there?
Probably.
N is for nuptials.
This is by...
I
cannot pronounce this name. He is a Thai horror filmmaker who directed Shudder, which is a great ghost movie. And this one's kind of entertaining. This one's like a dark comedy one with like... It's simple. It has like a simple twist. It's a guy tries to propose to his girlfriend by teaching a parrot to talk and having it give her a ring and say, will you marry me? But then the parrot starts saying a little bit more than it should, and I'm gonna leave it at that.
Yeah, I mean, you've seen it before. You've heard these stories of like the parrot reveals who the murderer was, or like repeat stuff it shouldn't have heard. It's like a classic joke. It's so simple. It's not super creative. I loved it though. I thought it was hilarious.
It's very well executed.
I thought it was super funny, even though I've heard the joke before. The joke never gets old.
I mean, a good joke like.
And it didn't even.
It's all in the execution.
It didn't even need the death part at the end. Like honestly, that was just to fit in with the rest of the series. It could have just been its own thing. It could have just like ended after like 10 seconds earlier.
I mean, the entire thing boils down to basically an extended sex joke, but it's a well executed sex joke.
Yeah, it's funny. I love Shudder. If you haven't seen the Thai film Shudder, highly recommend. One of my favorite horror films.
Just a
of
warning: a lot of this
2000s, early
episode is
2000s.
going to end up being us recommending other movies,
Yeah.
which is kind of the case for a series where there's 72 different directors.
Quinn, you enjoyed this one.
Ah, yes. O is for Orgasm, which is directed by Helene Catet and Bruno Forzani, who are Belgian filmmakers, probably most known for films like Amer, The Strange Color of Your Body's Tears, and Let the Corpses Tan. Their films
I didn't know that.
are very intense pastiches of giallo with very heavy experimental visual style, and this is pretty much depicting a strangler killing someone during sex, but instead of doing it in like the grossest way, it is presented as just a pure experiment in visual style and sound design, where it is just taking that extremely colorful, extremely stylized giallo approach and pushing it as far as they can into experimental territory. I really respect this one. Like, I don't know if it's as strong of a story as the other ones, but in terms of sheer experiment and direction, in terms of its cinematography and sound design and atmosphere, I think this one is genuinely excellent.
Yeah, this one didn't really need a story. Just because of what it was.
It's just an experimental short.
I think you liked it more than I did. I respected. I think it looked interesting. It had a good sound design. This may have just not really been for me on the basis of just like, I don't know. It was just going on, and I'm like, it's a kind of cool idea, but it's like watching a music video for like a Nine Inch Nails thing,
It didn't feel. It wasn't grungy enough to be
not Nine Inch Nails. Well, what? Some.
It felt very music video-y,
BDSM
but I don't mind that. I liked the music video-iness of it.
No, I did too.
And again, it's really well directed. It's probably,
I would say it's more of the editing than the direction.
It's beautifully directed. It's beautifully edited. Great cinematography. Great sound design. Like, it's something that is. It's not really much of a story, and it's not like as strong as some of the more creative shorts, but as just an example of creative direction and creative filmmaking, it stands out.
Yeah, I mean,
It's good. It's style over substance, 100%. But that style is really striking.
for anyone who says this is one of their favorites, I understand why. For me, I liked it, but it did not stick with me as much as it did Quinn. But I do understand why it would.
Yeah. Anyways, our next one is P is for Pressure.
Which one was this one? P is for Pressure.
This is about a prostitute who needs money, so she accepts a job to do crush porn on camera. I had to look up what that was. You don't want to look up what that was.
I'm guessing it's what it is, as it sounds like.
It's what it is. It's yeah, not to say anything, but this is another animal abuse short, and this does not have the redeeming qualities of D is for Dogfight. This one just feels.
This one's sad.
Feels sad and sleazy, and like.
I remember being decently shot. I didn't really take main notes for this.
It just
one, but
didn't really do much for me, and the shock value content was just there. It didn't really shock me.
I know
and it just felt very shallow.
There's gonna be people like, I'm sorry, you guys keep complaining about shock value, and you watch the ABCs of Death 1 through 3. I'm like, well, this is just our opinion.
Look, I'm fine with shock value. I just want good thoughtful shock value instead of just the cinematic equivalent of throwing spaghetti at the wall and saying, "There, are you happy now?" Which is what a lot of this feels like.
Like, I need my shock to have some substance to it.
Yeah, I need something like Martyrs. Like, Martyrs is shocking, but there's actual substance to this shock in Martyrs. It's trying to say something with it. Saw 6. Like, Saw 6 is
stupid, but
dumb,
awesome.
But it's trying to say something with its shock. A lot of this is it's just there. The shock is just there.
If you haven't seen Martyrs, watch Martyrs. It's awesome.
Martyrs is a very good movie, but it is not for the faint of heart.
I would say this one, it's all about desperation and what you'll do to survive and help your kids, I guess. She takes these gross jobs just so she can afford to, like,
also,
raise
I
her
think
kids.
this movie's made by a white dude, so...
I mean, I don't... Yeah, maybe.
I don't know. I feel it's probably one of the sketchier ones, but it's not like interestingly sketchy. It's like Actually, that kind of comes as a blessing, because interestingly sketchy is H is for hydroelectric diffusion, and I don't need interestingly sketchy. I really don't.
After this downer of a short, which I would say I don't hate this one, but I didn't like this one.
Yeah, it leaves no impact and just kind of annoys me.
I put that like right in the mid. I ranked each movie in order, and I put that like right below the middle of my rating. But next we have Quack.
Q is for Quack, which is directed by Adam Wingard, most recently of Godzilla vs. Kong, and co-writer Simon Barrett.
Right. So I've seen most of Adam Wingard's movies, and Simon Barrett I've seen some of his stuff. What did I see from him? So you're next, which he helped. I saw the stuff he wrote. I haven't seen anything he directed, which was only one movie, Seance.
I'm sometimes mixed on these two, but I will say I do really like The Guest. Like, The Guest, I think, is a very fun kind of pastiche of 80s horror. Dan Stevens is excellent in it. Like,
I watched that with my sister.
That one's fun. Their segment in this is fairly creative. Basically, the premise is it is Adam Wingard and Simon Barrett playing themselves, have no ideas what to do for their short. At the moment, they're just filming random screams and like just using it as an excuse to get naked actresses, and they don't have an idea. They have nothing in mind, so they decide, we're going to be the only short to have actual violence against animals. We're going to film
from the Italians.
We're going to film an actual on-screen death, just like they do in Cannibal Holocaust. And they decide, we're going to kill a duck, because nobody cares about ducks. And it goes wrong. It goes catastrophically wrong, because these are two people who have no idea how to kill anything. I appreciate that it's Wingard and Barrett playing themselves as total doofuses.
Like, there's some self-mockery, some self-deprivation.
They're making fun of themselves as like
I really did
pretentious indie filmmakers.
I really liked this one. It was funny. It was very satisfying.
It's basically a goofy comedy short. It feels like something way back when Andy Samberg probably would have done with SNL. Like, feels like something Bill Hader would have been in.
A little too dark for that, but yeah.
Maybe a little dark. I mean, SNL did do the Dead Poet Society parody sketch where a guy's head gets cut off. So maybe it's not too dark for SNL. Not. They did put Elon Musk on, so sadly anything is possible.
I didn't see that episode.
Good.
But just so you know, no ducks were harmed.
No ducks are harmed.
Not even like fake ducks. No ducks like in the film were harmed. Like, the duck survives. Because I don't know how much we're going to spoil this one, but it goes the way it goes the way you think it will go, and it's funny.
It goes the way you think that two guys with no firearms training and no understanding of how to kill something, trying to kill something live on camera, would go. I'll say that.
So we've basically spoiled it.
Yeah, basically.
So yeah, I actually recommend this one, especially after a lot of the weaker stuff we went through. I highly recommend that one.
It's another breather short.
Yeah, it's one that I would definitely recommend on its own, compared to some of these where I would recommend it comparatively to the other ones. Yeah. Like, there's someone like, I recommend this, but then I think outside of the ABCs, would I recommend it? Maybe not.
Next is R is for Removed, which is by Srdan Spasojevic, who some of you may know is the director of a Serbian film.
Oh, no.
Which we're going back to edgy territory, but surprisingly, this one isn't as edgy as you'd think. It's just confusing and weird. It's about a guy whose skin is film and it's cut off, and he's famous, and then he escapes from a hospital and dies by throwing himself under a train, and then it rains blood. It's kind of a story where the plot doesn't really connect together. Like, I wasn't really sure what was going on in this one.
I don't remember this one. Honestly, I'm trying to remember it.
You'd think you would remember one by the director of a Serbian film,
right.
But this one is just... It's just cheaply shot and confusing. I didn't really understand what was going on or
I'm
why
honestly
anything was going
trying
on.
to remember like what this looked like, and I just can't. I definitely saw it because I was here. Yeah, though.
Yeah, it's just kind of a nothing. Again. Anyways,
next
S is for Speed, which is directed by Jake West, who is probably more known as a documentarian who's done documentary serve on the British video nasties. This brings up something that we have not run into on this show. I don't know if we're going to run into it for a while, which is the plague of the late 90s and early 2000s, fake Tarantino. This short is 100% fake Tarantino. It's about two women who are driving through the desert. Someone's chasing them, might be death. It's all a metaphor for drug addiction. But it's also very much trying to be like fake Tarantino. So it's just a lot of like grindhouse movie references, extremely profane dialogue. This one just annoyed me. This one is like... This one
throwing all the color filters. To
yeah,
make it look like
a lot
the
of
desert.
Instagram filters in this short. It's just... This one grated on me. It's like... This one had a very nails against chalkboard feel, I think. Because I don't really like the knockoff Tarantinos, because it's like... For me, Tarantino is the only director who's been able to do Tarantino. Maybe sometimes Robert Rodriguez, but honestly, I like him more when he's just doing his own thing. But yeah, this one annoyed me. And not like because it's the edgiest of the short, it's just like so aggressively late 90s.
Yeah, I agree. This was kind of just I agree with everything you said. This one left...
Again, this is another weirdly horny one, but at least it's not like really weird fetish shit. So it's still an issue because it's like a lot of women in low-cut tops swearing at each other.
Swearing, driving, being chased, doing drugs, talking about...
It feels like a movie made by somebody who had a Russ Meyer movie described to them secondhand. Like somebody who's vaguely heard the concept of Faster Pussycat Kill Kill, but does not know what the movie is, and is like, I'm gonna make it anyways.
Yeah, it's kind of like this was like kind of... It was kind of like, yeah, I would say more Rodriguez than Tarantino, but
yeah,
Rodriguez I really like. Spy Kids is a masterpiece.
Rodriguez is an underrated filmmaker. I am part of the Alita Battle Angel Defense Squad. That movie was good.
Who doesn't like that movie?
That movie is very good. It has one of the best uses of an F word in any PG-13 movie.
It's true.
And Rosa Salazar punches someone so hard her fist literally becomes part of their body and fuses with them. It's a cool movie. What is there not to like about Alita Battle Angel? Anyways, T is for toilet. This is actually, I believe, a contest winner where they had people submit different options for T, and English stop-motion animator Lee Hardcastle wins this for T is for toilet, which is about a child having a nightmare about potty training, and then it takes a turn near the end that leads to the prerequisite death. It's fine.
Apparently there's a sequel called Ghost Burger.
Apparently.
Where it is revealed that the child survived his injuries. I'm reading that off of the Wikipedia
So technically
page.
this one doesn't have a death either.
So EBCs of injuries.
ABCs of 24 deaths, 1 presumed off-screen death, and 1 severe injury. It's not as catchy of a title, so I think they just went with ABCs of death instead.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for dream sequences of evil toilets, because toilets are scary.
Yeah.
That's why I don't use them.
I don't know. I don't know if this is my favorite stop-motion animation segment. I was going to say I'm not sure if this is my favorite animation segment in general, but there's a lot of stop-motion in these films. The other stop-motion segments that are going to show up, I think, are more interesting to me. But this is well done for what it is. It's, like, very well animated. I like kind of the claymation style that they go for it. Like, kind of Wallace and Gromit, but grungier and more wrong.
Oh, this guy did a portion of the Gorillaz music video, Trans.
Yeah, I think I've seen his work before. He's like a solid animator, but yeah, this one's all right.
Speaking of all right, next we have Ben Wheatley's U is for Unearthed.
Ben Wheatley kind of tends to be a very divisive filmmaker. I actually really like his work. I like Refire. I really like Kill List, which is terrifying. I even like his version of High Rise, even though he changes a lot from the book. Like, I still really respect his version of High Rise, even though it's not as faithful as an adaptation that I've hoped for.
And apparently he's doing The Meg too. Yes.
I'm very curious what the hell that's going to look like. But this short is... This one's solid. It's another point of view short, but it's a much better one than we got with J is for Gravity, where this is a point of view short literally from the perspective of an unearthed vampire, hence the title U is for Unearthed. And it's just basically the vampire being awoken, feeding, and then getting hunted down.
Something great about making one of these shorts is, like, if they gave him V, he would just change it to V is for vampire. A is A for alive. It's alive. I don't know. Like, you can just, like...
Accidentally hit the emergency SOS button on my phone. Sorry.
Oh, no.
Save me from Ben Wheatley. No. This one's fine. It's like it's the better of the POV shorts. It's not like the most original thing, but it's well executed for what it is. And it has
One of the
Michael
few
Smiley
period
in it.
pieces. One of the right? Isn't it a period piece? Isn't it like the?
I think it's modern day.
Oh, is it modern day? Okay.
It is modern day, and it has Michael Smiley in it, which is a perk, because I
Right.
like when Michael Smiley shows up in things. He's a good actor.
I was just thinking because of the they go classic with the stakes and whatnot.
It's very classic vampire rules, like stakes, crosses, garlic, that kind of thing. I appreciate that they're going very classic vampires on it, and it's like kind of not much. It's not like the most creative work, but it's well executed. It's fun.
Next we have
V is for vagitus, the cry of a newborn baby. This one is done by a comic book artist, which makes a lot of sense because it's very comic booky. It's set in a future where childbirth is controlled by the government. Cops hunt down people who have illegal babies, and then one of those cops is having doubts, and one of those babies is psychic, and
it was stupid.
It feels like
high concept,
feels like
but
very high concept, but they don't really develop the concept.
Kind of Paul Verhoeven-ish, kind of.
Yeah, but it didn't really have like the guts of like a Verhoeven work. It didn't have the guts of something like RoboCop or Starship Troopers, where it's very sarcastic and like darkly trying to make a point. It just felt like a very specific, just a very generic pastiche of 80s sci-fi. Like,
this was made by a comic book artist who's done a lot of interesting. I haven't read a lot of it, but like Spider-Man, X-Men Unlimited stuff, Wolverine.
Wikipedia notes that this short started as an idea for a feature film, and that makes a lot of sense. That this feels like somebody trying to stuff their feature idea into 5 minutes.
I was also getting some like Equilibrium vibes.
I don't know if we can promote our own work, but I was getting vibes of a short film I made, and it's like
Cold Hard Blood.
Yeah.
It was.
It's like a very conventional, like kind of sci-fi dystopian short.
I'm not saying this to make your head feel bigger and boost your ego, but Cold Hard Blood is significantly better.
Everybody, please watch Cold Hard Blood.
So
C is for Cold Hard Blood.
Exactly. C.
And it does have a death in it. It does have multiple deaths.
It has multiple deaths.
I could have made an ABCs of Death short.
And you can too. We should all make. Everyone submit your own movie. We're gonna make our own anthology.
But yeah, this one just felt very generic dystopia. Like
generic dystopia, cheap. The typical characters of like the officer who is against the new tyrannical government. If you've seen it before, but this one has a psychic baby because Eraserhead.
And then a head explodes.
Isn't Eraserhead, doesn't that have a psychic baby?
The baby's not psychic in Eraserhead. It just has a very creepy baby.
Oh, creepy babies are creepy. You've played Resident Evil 8, you know.
I know.
W is
for WTF. This sums up my entire feelings on the short. Moving on. Okay, no. It's about a guy who's making an animated short relating to the letter W, and then things happen. That's the best way I can put it. It's just part of it's edgy, but part of it is just lol so random humor. It's like early internet I can has cheeseburger humor with an R rating, and I did not like it. It looks very cheap. It's just things happen because it's random. There's zombie clowns. There's just random puppets. There's a giant walrus for some reason.
It takes a creative person and a smart person to be random, to make this randomness and this, everything is happening and makes no sense, and make it like smart and interesting.
This was not it.
I mean, like I can just like make a movie where it's just me trying to do a cartwheel for 10 minutes, and it'll be like all so random, and then I'll explode, and it's like ha ha ha. I don't know that I didn't feel like there was a whole lot of thought put into this one.
Yeah.
If there's a deeper meaning, then
unfortunately, I do need to bring up that the director of this short, John Schnepp, died in 2018 of a stroke.
Oh well, that's terrible.
It's horrific. I still don't like the short, but my respect to his family. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I feel bad for disliking it, but I still dislike it.
Yeah. It did not stick with me. What else did he do any other movies that
he directed a lot of stuff for like television, Adult Swim.
Oh, Aqua Teen Hunger Force. Okay, so this guy makes sense.
He's done good stuff. He's
adult,
Venture Brothers.
He's an adult.
He apparently did a lot of Venture Brothers, which
that makes sense.
I'm good with that.
This makes a little more sense. He's a Aqua Teen Hunger Force kind of.
Yeah, he's like, it's very early Adult Swim humor, and that can be very hit or miss, honestly. And this was kind of a miss.
Right.
Like, didn't work. Respect to John Schnepp's family. He at least directed a bunch of Venture Brothers, which is a good show.
Next we have one of my favorites, actually. I really like this one. This
Yeah.
one's disturbing.
X is for XXL, which is by Xavier Gens, who is a French filmmaker. He's done The Divide, Cold Skin. He directed some episodes of Gareth Evans's most recent TV show, Gangs of London, which we still need to watch.
We do.
Yeah, but this one is very much a shock value one, but I think it's probably one of the strongest pure shock value ones.
Well,
where it's literally...
it's kind of got a...
It's got a message, and it's specifically talking about bulimia and body image issues, where it's the first half of the short is a woman who is plus size, sort of being bullied as people taunt her for her weight, and is constantly surrounded by these images of basically unnaturally thin women who are in beauty campaigns. The second half of it is basically this woman trying to mutilate herself to make herself thinner.
Just hang up all the fat.
It's horrific, but it is doing so with an actual message to it. It's very much actually trying to make a point with its shock value, that this is sort of the extreme version of how these images of beauty and this artificiality of like this one very specific kind of beauty that doesn't account for different body types affects women's mental states and pushes people to depression and self-harm.
No, it's super
and
dark.
It's
It's super interesting.
It's horrifying. The second half is brutal.
It is brutal. It's hard to watch, but you keep your eyes glued. And over the past week, I have now lost 3 pounds not because of this movie. Great movie. Or
really well
executed. Not great, but it's solid short.
It's probably the best of the pure shock value ones, in my opinion.
And I hesitate to call it pure shock value. It's shocking, but like I don't know.
It's based around shock value, but it does so with something
horror.
to say.
The horror is the shocking stuff,
and it's
but also
thoughtful
just how
about it.
sad it is. It's super sad.
It's depressing. Like you feel for this character, and it's just the ending is just crushing. And it's well executed. So yeah. Next is Y is for Young Buck. This is directed by Jason Eisner, who's the director of Hobo with a Shotgun.
I love Hobo with a Shotgun.
This is not his strongest work. This is about a kid whose teacher is a pedophile and
it's like a gym teacher.
Licks kids' sweat, and then the kid gets revenge. Again, this kind of just goes to like very lightly treating some very dark stuff.
It was the janitor. That's who it was. It was the janitor who was.
It's just, oh yeah, look, pedophilia. They don't show much of anything on screen, which is good, but it just feels kind of blank shock value, and beyond that, it's just, again, kind of not much happening.
Yeah, the message is pedophilia is bad. Here's a pedophile getting murdered, and
it's like you could say
it could have been done more interesting.
You could have made it interesting, or like it just felt again like kind of that mixture of blank shock value and not really doing much with said blank shock value. Yeah.
Watch Hobo with a Shotgun instead.
Anyways, our final short of the first ABCs of Death is Z is for Zetsu Metsu, or Extinction.
I have no idea what
Directed by Yoshihiro Nishimura, a man who Wikipedia describes as the Tom Savini of Japan, and I have no idea what the fuck happened in this short. I don't say that in a good way. This one is, there's a Dr. Strangelove analog, and he's talking about American culture's role in Japan, and then weird sex shit happens. There's, again, Nazi sex shit in this, which is not great. People dress up like the atomic bombs. There's a lot of weird stuff with rice and rice cookers, which I think is supposed to be a reference to Seijun Suzuki's Branded to Kill. Look, what I'm trying to say is this is trying to say something, but I'll be damned if I know what exactly it's trying to say. Also, Seijun Suzuki did it better. Like, it's just a shock value, but I just don't know what they were thinking with this.
They're like referencing Dr. Strangelove.
They're referencing Dr. Strangelove and Branded to Kill.
Weird.
Watch both of those movies, not this.
And they're nothing like they're nothing like this. Like this is its own weird style, and it's just
there's a lot of prosthetic penises in this one. I don't know why the prosthetic penises were there.
Yeah, I don't recommend this one.
This one is it's another kind of shocking one, but it's funny because it's very much nudity in itself is shocking. Yeah. So it's like after everything they've gone through, this final short is like, oh look, we have naked women. Be shocked.
It's the Hereditary school of horror. Just like, hey, naked old
Naked
people
people are
equals
scary.
Oh, it's like, are they?
Are they scary?
They're gross. Old people are disgusting. No.
I mean, it could be. There is a very real possibility that the director of this could be a never nude. We don't know. Z is for Zetsumetsu, directed by Tobias Funke.
I was gonna say, do you this one or Fart? Which of the weird Japanese directed?
Pass.
All right.
Oh no, J.
Jay. Oh yeah, but that one was like good.
Yeah, I'll pass on both of these, honestly. Alright, next we are moving on to ABCs of Death 2.
Electric Boogaloo.
I'm gonna say kind of right off the bat, I think this one's a lot stronger overall than ABCs of Death 1. I think they're a lot more creative and more consistent shorts. We still have some duds, but I think they're less common than
There's
this one.
less named directors, interestingly, but
It's more eclectic. There's a lot more sort of international directors. We get people from the Middle East. We get directors from Africa. It's a lot more eclectic in terms of people they selected as their filmmakers.
I will say, ABCs of Death 1, I probably don't plan to watch that ever again, but I would watch ABCs of Death 2 again.
Yeah. This one's...
At least some of it.
This one's got some really solid shorts, and why don't we get into them? Starting with A is for Amateur, directed by E.L. Katz.
Yeah, this was a fun one. It was all about, like, you know, it was kind of parodying the action star hitman. You know, it's like in his head how good, like, in this, like this well planned out assassination will go, and then it shows the reality of what happens, where like immediately things go
Everything
wrong.
goes to shit, where it's just an assassin trying to sneak into this
He just gets
drug
stuck.
dealer's building through air vents, and that's the first half of it is the fantasy, and the second half is him failing because the air vents are just full of shit, and then...
Because in real life, you can't crawl through air vents like that, I don't think. I think it's, like, really dangerous and hard.
And then it has, like, a decent little twist ending. I don't want to give this one away, but there's a fun little final twist to it.
Yeah, it's like a little
really pushes it
punchline.
up. Like, it's a good punchline.
So yeah, I enjoyed that one a fair amount.
Yeah, this one's pretty good. Next is B is for Badger by Julian Barrett, a British comedian known for his work with The Mighty Boosh. He has also very significantly appeared a lot in Garth Marenghi's Dark Place, which is one of the funniest shows ever made, in my opinion. It is hilarious, and this is actually really funny. This one is... It's a found footage dark comedy short about a wildlife documentarian, kind of a fake Richard Attenborough kind of guy who has a grudge against Richard Attenborough, who is an asshole to his crew, investigating a
Chernobyl-esque.
investigating sort of a badger population that's near a power plant, and unbeknownst to him is basically mutated into a monster. And it's short, like darkly funny. It's good, very dry British humor. It's funny.
Yeah, if you like British humor like I do, like dry humor, you'll
It's not like Monty Python kind of British
No.
humor. It's very sarcastic.
It's like the badgers were all killed off. Like what? It's like, but it just shot that thing out like your pants out of the ground. I can't. It's great. I thought it was hilarious.
It's very darkly funny, and it's like
simple,
and it
funny.
doesn't wear out its welcome. It's got some like good, very sarcastic
You could
gags.
technically call this a one take, even though there were cuts. They were hidden to make it look like one take.
Yeah.
You could call this a one take.
It's pretty solid. Like I like Julian Barrett. I think Julian Barrett's funny, and he did solid work here.
Next up we've got
C is for Capital Punishment by Julian Gilby. This is about a man who is accused of killing a teenager in a small town, and the townspeople decide to execute him, and it goes wrong.
Well, yeah, and like she's just missing, but she comes back, and it's just an execution short.
Yeah,
and it's like
it feels like they're making
becomes
a point to it.
Yeah, I don't know what it's
About like capital punishment and mob justice. It's
right.
I don't think it's one of the stronger ones, but like it's kind of the baseline for this movie. The baseline for this movie is a lot higher than I'd say baseline is for ABCs of Death. This is like, whereas baseline for ABCs of Death is like mediocre, goes over your head, kind of you forget about it. This one it's like solid. It's not like memorable, but it's solidly made, and that's the baseline we're going for.
The strongest part of it is just the race against time, where they find out she's still alive,
Yeah.
They're trying to stop this capital punishment.
And then the race against time is defined by the fact that the people keep botching the execution. And it's going on longer than it should.
And yeah, I don't love the execution of it. But it is fine.
It's solid.
Next we've got
D is for Deloused by stop-motion animator Robert Morgan. I don't know if I can describe this one because it's kind of just a lot of very weird things happen in it, but I really liked this one. This one is genuinely for me one of the creepiest ones out of the entire franchise.
This is something you would find if you found this short like in a VHS in the basement of some house. Like this is the kind of thing you'd find. It's like you shouldn't be watching it.
You shouldn't be watching this, and it's effective. Like I didn't mention this before, but this is one of the ones that is genuinely scary to me. It's creepy as hell. The jerky, very body horror-ish stop motion style is very weird. It reminds me a lot of the work of the brothers Quay, who are British experimental animated filmmakers whose work kind of crosses over a lot with sort of horror archetypes. And I think this one was just really effective. It's creepy. It doesn't feel like you should be watching this. It's good.
I concur. It would take us like an hour to explain everything that happened just because of how like
it's
intricate and
very
detailed.
It feels somewhat like, I don't want to be very basic film taste here, but it feels like Eraserhead, where it just throws you into this nightmarish, surreal world without much explanation. It says, here, figure out the rules for yourself. And you don't really figure them out, but you're unsettled by how detached from reality everything is.
And I love stop motion. It's like one of my favorite means of animation.
And this really captures the way stop motion can actually scare you. We'll get back to stop motion later when we get to our final installment in this franchise. There's another really good stop motion installment in that. But yeah, this one I really like. This is probably one of my favorites.
Next, we have your other favorite by Alejandro Brugues. E is for Equilibrium. And when I say it's one of Quinn's favorite, I mean he did not enjoy this
I did not like this one. This one, it took me a couple days to figure out what this one felt like to me. This one feels like a beer commercial. This feels like a joke that would be in a Miller Lite commercial. And not even like a Super Bowl commercial, just like a regular generic beer commercial where it's just like two castaways are on a beach, a woman shows up, and then they start fighting over her.
And then they decide bros before hoes send beer is what the ending is. And It was just not...
It's not particularly well shot. It's just...
There was like a good sequence where it was like they were showing the passing of time and it was like all in one shot, I think.
Decent choreography, looks a little too flat. It's just we've heard this joke told before, and it's not particularly funny.
Women be shopping.
Yeah, it's very much a women be shopping kind of joke, and it's not funny. It's like kind of a sign that you didn't really come up with unique humor for it, and it's not funny.
But the director, he did something for Nightmare Cinema.
Oh, he did. Which one did he do for that?
For Nightmare Cinema, he did. Gosh, which one was it? It was...
Oh, he did the first one, the slasher one.
Oh, the one with the bugs.
Yeah, that one was...
I liked that one a lot, actually.
That one had fun. That one had like some really fun gags in it. It's not the strongest out of all those out of Nightmare Cinema, which I guess we're just taking that a brief diversion to talk about Nightmare Cinema. Nightmare Cinema is kind of very mixed, but there's one segment directed by David Slade, who directed a lot of Hannibal, that is superb, that is actually terrifying. And then the rest of it's kind of...
the black and white one?
Yeah, it's the black and white one. And the rest of it is kind of... they have their moments, and it's very give or take. We might talk about that eventually, because we might do an episode that we might just talk about sort of gathered anthology movies. But getting off track, he's done better work.
He has. F is for Falling. I like this one too. This one stood out as like a more unique... It felt like a different genre.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like horror.
It's like
just kind of drama. It's like international drama, because this, I believe, is from Israeli filmmakers. It's technically topical, and it's about basically sort of is an Israeli paratrooper stuck in a situation with sort of an Arabic kid being the only one who can help.
Yeah,
help her.
she gets stuck in a tree, and then this Palestinian kid, I believe,
Yeah.
he's got a gun, and she's got trying to save herself and to get this kid to cut her down.
And it's kind of
And
it kind of does have a point. It does have a point. It kind of ultimately presents like that the violence is cyclical, and it's ultimately got a very tragic ending.
It's super.
It's not what you'd expect for horror because it's just very much a straight international drama about the Israel-Palestine conflict that is a very tragic ending.
Yeah, it's definitely something you would see in like an art house theater or something. Just like some like.
Yeah. It feels
the
very
ArcLight, rest in peace.
out of step with the rest of the film, but I respect it. It's well made.
Yeah, is ArcLight?
It's like and it's kind of a very thoughtful take on that conflict. I think it's not like something that ultimately takes as much of a side, but it's ultimately kind of condemning the idea of the conflict as well. Not to get again into really politically fraught territory, but I think this is as
Today on Sometimes They Come Back, Quinn and I will be discussing
abortion and the Israel-Palestine conflict. But yeah, I think this is as good of a take as you possibly can on this while still being somewhat apolitical. I think this is as good of like a thoughtful
I wouldn't
take.
say it's apolitical. It's very political. It's just
it's more
very
politically neutral. It's kind of trying to be fair to everybody.
Yeah,
but it does ultimately kind of have the point of this conflict is pointless, and it's just the
It's
only people
sympathetic.
you hurt are yourselves in that conflict. It's very anti-war, which I appreciate.
Yeah, it was very sympathetic.
G is for Granddad.
It's not sympathetic. G is for Granddad was kind of reminded me.
Anyways, off of the extremely politically serious short and onto the one by the guy who made the Greasy Strangler, which I still have not finished. I'm very confused by that movie, and I'm also very confused by this short. I don't understand what the feel of it is. I don't understand what they're going for. They also steal a short from a Junji Ito short story, which I don't get this one.
I kind of like this one enough, just for being weird. I actually, so I haven't seen it kind of vaguely reminded me of a Harmony Korine movie.
Very, yeah. Where it's about a guy who lives with his granddad, and his granddad's very, like, weird. Out of touch and weird, and then weird things happen.
It turns out, what was he? He's like a...
he doesn't have a penis, and he also lives in a hole in the kid's bed.
Well, he's like an adult. He's like in his 20s.
He lives in a hole in his grandson's bed. Which is very much which if you've read The Human Chair, which is a old Japanese short story by an author named Edogawa Ranpo, which was adapted into a Junji Ito comic, you know that twist is kind of from that.
If you will like this movie, or not you... Well, actually, here's a movie I'll recommend people should watch, but I'm guessing 90% of you will hate it. Trash Humpers. It's a Harmony Korine movie. It is fascinating. It's just, it's like a mockumentary of just these weird inbred, just rednecks who go around and just be weird. And it's very Harmony. It's a Harmony Korine movie.
You heard everyone. Max says, go watch Trash Humpers.
Honestly, some people will find it might be a secretly genius movie. I don't know, but I was just like watching the TV in awe, like petting my dog, just like I have no idea what I'm watching, but I'm interested.
Anyways, G is for Granddad. This and Greasy Strangler, which are from the same director, my attitude towards them is that I respect it. I understand that this director, Jim Hosking, is like a very specific kind of style and like this very specific kind of weirdness. It's not for me. Like, it's very much not my style. I respect it, but I don't really get it, and it's just...
I like this one.
I don't connect with it
slightly more than Quinn did, but I'm not going to say I would recommend it.
Yeah, and it's not like I hate it on principle. It's just that, like, the sense of humor and content of it don't really connect with me.
H is for Head Games.
This is done by Bill Plimpton, who is a very respected American animator. Does a lot of short film work. Like, he has a very distinct hand-drawn kind of style. He's done opening couch gags for The Simpsons repeatedly. Like, I believe he's been nominated for Academy Awards. He's this very well-known kind of underground American filmmaker, and this is kind of more typical of the rest of his work than this is of like anything in an ABCs of Death, where it's just like a kind of weird little experimental vignette about two people kissing whose facial features basically engage in war.
Yeah, it's something you see at like a weird surrealist art gallery.
Yeah.
Like at Omega Mart.
like I said, it's kind of more typical of Bill Plimpton's work than it is of anything in the ABCs of Death, which I appreciate because between this and F is for Falling, there's stuff in this that kind of reaches a little bit farther outside of like the just kind of shock value horror of the first movie. There's people that are trying very different things with this.
I agree. So yeah, it's fine. If you're into like hand-drawn animation a lot,
It's very beautifully animated.
It's well animated. Yeah,
It's got a very distinct style to it.
it does. Eyes for Invincible is I believe this is from the Philippines.
Eyes for Invincible is from the Philippines, and I actually really like this one.
This one was a super.
It's
fun
very stylized. It's probably one of the most stylized out of the three films. This one is basically a very dark comedy where a family is trying to claim their grandmother's inheritance, except the problem is the grandmother has been cursed with invincibility. So it's just all these family members plotting out who's going to get what in the inheritance as they just repeatedly try to find ways of killing her. And I actually really like this one. It feels like a very fun setup for a film. It doesn't wear out its welcome. I like the style of this.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said.
Great production design. Amazing production design.
It really reminded me of back to Timo, but like a better Timo movie, or like May the Devil Take You to come back to that. It was creepy. It's
got some fun kind of. It's got that kind of Evil Dead 2 horror comedy atmosphere, which I really appreciate. It's very stylized, fun ending. Like doesn't wear out its welcome. This one's good. I really like this one.
Highly recommend for people who are a fan of Evil Dead.
Next is J is for Jesus.
Back to some social commentary.
Where literally the horror of this film is conversion therapy, where it is a short about a gay man who is kidnapped by basically a religious group hired by his father who try to subject him to extremely torturous conversion therapy that is basically pretty much less than a step removed from being saw traps, and it's horrific. And then it kind of takes a Hellraiser turn for the end when the man's lover basically rises from the grave with this kind of
they killed his
Hellraiser-ish monster and take down the guys committing the conversion therapy. This is one of my favorite of the social commentary big message shorts. I think this is the one that kind of mixes like the horror it's going for of like somewhere between Saw and Hellraiser, and like what it's trying to say about trying to show you the horrific nature of what conversion therapy does. I really appreciate this one, and I think the director would actually this is a better Hellraiser sequel than a lot of Hellraiser sequels, which isn't saying much, but I appreciate this. It has that cool kind of Clive Barker feel to it with like that eerie mix of like the sensual and the horrific, and like that sort of more extreme edges of sexuality. And if you're reminding me of Clive Barker in a way where you're reminding me of like how Clive Barker thematically and creatively approaches his work, that's good. I respect that.
No, I really did enjoy this one. And I love.
I don't know if
imagery.
I enjoyed it. It's very dark and kind of upsetting. But
yeah, it's not like I was like, oh boy, like this is fun.
Conversion therapy.
I love. No, it's but I was glued. It was intense. It was satisfying at the end. Had some great like provocative imagery.
Yeah, I don't know if I said we wouldn't try to get too hard into political material, but I don't think I'm saying much when I say that conversion therapy is wrong and horrific. Like, I don't think I'm saying too much that's controversial here. Conversion therapy should be banned.
You lost an entire subscriber.
Oh yeah, somewhere. we lost all our homophobic subscribers. Boo hoo, poor us.
I like this one a lot. I love some of the provocative imagery, especially at the end with like
that kind of very Hellraiser ending.
Yeah. It's got a lot to say about religion, conversion therapy. It's
it does a lot with a little.
Homophobia. It's a lot. It's interesting.
Very well done.
K is for Nell.
I don't really get why the title is K is for Nell.
What does Nell mean?
Death Nell? I don't know.
Well,
it's about a giant sphere of black goo that makes people go crazy.
It had a good solid opening. This girl, she looks out the window. There's a big orb made in like Blender,
and there's a really good shot where it's just sort of from her perspective, panning down the apartments of this building, and sort of as we look into each apartment, we see the people and it's starting to go kill crazy.
Right, and then at that point, I'm like, I'm in.
What's gonna happen? And then the short kind of
then like
it doesn't end. It kind of just happens for a few minutes and then ends.
Yeah, like a black goo comes to our house, mixes with blood on the ground,
and then it stops.
Yeah, I don't know what if there's something. Did I have to like read some book before this to understand what it was about?
I don't really know what it was. It's just this one just kind of confused me.
Yeah, it was such a interesting.
It's well shot though.
Interesting, good shots. Well shot. Interesting opening.
Wish they'd done more.
Yeah, it needed another. I guess a little more story, a little more happening.
Next is L is for Legacy by Lancelot Oduwa-Imasuen. I'm probably pronouncing his name wrong. This is an interesting one because this one is by a Nigerian filmmaker. And
this is the only one from Africa.
Yeah, and instead of being like very polished, it's kind of drawing on that like very like low budget kind of African cinema. Like it's drawing on kind of the resources and like that very like low budget style of African cinema. And I always really appreciate that. I think that's been a very interesting film movement to watch because it's just basically people who don't really have access to the kind of fancy techniques we have, like all of the technical stuff that like a much more wealthy Western country would have, saying we're going to do it anyways out of sheer love for cinema. And it's like honestly like the genius or like the fact that stuff within those movies doesn't necessarily align with what we would normally consider as like a good film in like an American sense. It kind of doesn't end up mattering because of how passionate these filmmakers are, that they're literally working with nothing, and that doesn't stop them.
It's got a giant rat monster eating people. It looks goofy, but it's so entertaining. It moves fast.
It's kind of got like it's kind of more like a little more fantasy, honestly. It's got like that very like African mythology vibe to it,
right.
which I dig. I dig. I was like kind of very mythological.
It's a new
horror.
Like it's something that's not really explored much, especially in these shorts. It's a different like area
because you don't really see a lot of like African American horror, especially nowadays, but you don't see a lot of horror just straight up coming out of Africa. You don't see a lot of African cinema that is just made by African filmmakers. A lot of it is just kind of like white people making movies about Africa or like. And I really appreciate this. This is a very fun piece of perspective.
I was slightly confused with the story at points, and yes, it is very janky in its execution, but it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter because the director is clearly very passionate about it. He clearly seems to be having a lot of fun with it, and it's a very cool perspective. It's something you don't usually see a lot in these kind of like very Western-centric horror anthologies. So it's cool. I really respect it.
I recommend L is for Legacy.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's all it is. Yeah. It's really fun. It's interesting.
M is for Masticate. Masticate, not the other word, you sickos.
So this one's interesting. Because
this one is the one that won the contest, which is a contest for M. We'll get back to that later. Because there were a lot of films that got submitted to M, so much that they actually made a film of them. We'll get back to those later.
M is basically it's another punchline movie.
It's a single joke.
It's a single joke, and it's kind of funny.
Yeah, it's a man in slow motion who seems to be a zombie, just running through people, biting people, and then there's the punchline. Yeah. The punchline is just bath salts.
Yeah, a guy runs down, he starts biting people, pushing them. A cop comes, he attacks the cop shoots him, he dies, and it's 34 minutes earlier.
And it's like, hey man, want to take some bath salts? Like, sure. Yeah. And then it's over.
And so this was my reaction. I'm like, oh, so it's all in slow motion. I'm like, hey, this is pretty stylized. This is pretty cool. And then, that's kind of funny. And then we move on to N.
Yeah.
So that's the one. This is the one that beat everything else.
This is the one that beat everything else, honestly. Honestly, I'll have a lot to say about that when we get to ABCs of Death 2.5 because there are some ones that I think that are actually way better than this.
It was fun, but I agree.
It's fun, but it's fun. It's like a decently executed like single joke short, but I think there's ones there that are much more ambitious and creative.
N is for Nexus.
N is for Nexus. This is directed by Larry Fessenden, who's like a big fixture of independent horror. He's been like supportive of a lot of like horror filmmakers. He appears in a lot of movies. He's kind of produced a lot of shit, so he's like he's basically an indie horror fixture. He also I believe he also wrote the video game Until Dawn.
Really? I love
that game. That game's fun. So I really like his work on that. He's done Max, I know you love stuff about Wendigo. He's apparently done a lot of stuff about the Wendigo.
Oh, that's awesome. So yeah,
I need to see more of his work. I've heard some of his work is excellent. I've heard the ones I need to see are No Telling and Habit. I've heard those are like very excellent takes on kind of like Frankenstein and Dracula mythology. This one's not great.
No, I didn't like this one. It's just the guy and the girl.
It's not really much of a horror. Again, it's kind of more of like a drama about like a couple trying to meet up on a Halloween night, but things go wrong and there's a death.
Quinn, you'll laugh. Taylor, if you're listening to this, the main character and his girlfriend reminded me of you and your girlfriend, Tess.
Oh God.
So, if that's good or bad, I think it's good.
Yeah, it's probably
good. They seemed happy.
I mean, I think the problem is that one of them ends up dead. So
That's true.
I think you might have just cursed my friends, Max.
No, I'm sorry. I don't mean to curse you. But yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of this one. It was kind of just not very likable, just not very entertaining. It kind of remember that scene in Snatch, the montage where it's just like you have like 3 different perspectives and then the music ramps up.
Yeah, it's kind of like
how someone gets hit by a car.
It's kind of just that scene from
Snatch.
Snatch.
It's that, but done not nearly as well. So yeah, I didn't really like this one.
Yeah. It just I don't know. I'm sure Fessenden's done better work. He's done better work specifically with Until Dawn, which is the only one of his works I've experienced. But that is a very fun horror game.
Okay. You know the stereotype, the black guy always dies first in horror movies? When I played Until Dawn with my brother, we were trying to save everyone. We saved everyone except for him.
So he technically did die first.
He died first and was the only one to die. So at the very end, they're talking about like, oh, I'm so glad we all survived, but poor Michael.
Yeah. If we get a Patreon, we will talk about horror games.
Oh, I'm excited.
If.
Next we get a high point. Oh.
Next we actually get kind of like one of my big high points for both films, which is O is for ochlocracy, which is a term for mob rule. This is by Hajime Ohata, who is a Japanese filmmaker. We're back to the Japanese filmmakers, but this one is an incredibly creative take on zombies. And there's a bunch of zombie shorts in these 3 films, but this is my favorite because the basic idea of it is that this is post-zombie apocalypse where there's been development of a drug that allows zombies to retain their mental functions. And the basic hook of this is that it is basically your character is basically a traditional survivor from a zombie movie being put on trial by zombies for murdering them. And it's very good Japanese dark satirical comedy making fun of like legal bureaucracy. Also kind of playing with the archetypes of the zombie film in a very creative way, riffing on the stereotypes, pointing out, hey, these protagonists you've seen, they're kind of psychopathic.
Yeah, they're enjoying killing these zombies. They're like, oh, we're doing this for survival. And they're like, hey, you seem like you're having some fun.
Yeah, I don't want to say too much about this because this is one of the ones I would recommend you watch outside of ABCs of Death. On its own, this is just a really creative, darkly funny short film. There's an amazing gag in it where they bring in a zombie's head and then reanimate it as a witness, and then it just starts freaking out. The guy starts freaking out about where his body is, and they have to drag him off. It's great. It's got a lot of great jokes. It's got a good kind of twist ending. It's got fun, dark comedy, social commentary that reminded me a little of Shin Godzilla. I really like this one. This is genuinely a contender for one of my favorites of the entire series.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I like this one a lot. This one is super interesting, funny. It's probably my favorite it's definitely my favorite Japanese short of these 3.
Anyways, our next short cheats. Our next short is cheating because the title of this one by Todd Rohal is P is for scary, which is cheating. This is wrong.
I think it's kind of funny.
Bad. You cheated. You didn't do your job. Go back and name it something else.
I know
you cheated.
Yeah, you could just do paranoid. I don't know. No, but I saw some reviews. Some people really didn't like this one. I actually kind of like this one.
This one's interesting.
I thought it was funny. It was kind of like Three Stooges, David Lynch.
It's Three Stooges via David Lynch. It's aggressively weird, kind of like G is for Granddad. But I think the aggressively weirdness of this kind of clicked with me a bit more. Like, I don't know if it's my favorite, but I enjoyed that it's trying to do, like, it's a Three Stooges short that essentially takes place in the Black Lodge from Twin Peaks. If that seems like something you're gonna love, you're probably gonna love it.
It's if if Mo from the Three Stooges would suddenly turn into a pile of gore. Just like shocking.
It's very much kind of trying to do a Lynch pastiche in the context of another genre, but it's kind of the genre mismatch is very fun. It's creative.
I besides the title,
Besides the cheating title, I respect this one a lot.
I'm not going to say it's a masterpiece, but I do enjoy this one a fair amount.
Yeah.
Oh, cues for questionnaires. The next one. I actually really liked this one when I first saw it because I saw the ABCs of Death 2 before you did. I saw this years ago, and when it came to Q, I would pause the movie because it's a questionnaire. They're asking him all these like logic problems, and I'd just pause and I'd be thinking like, all right, can I solve this? Can I pass this questionnaire?
Yeah, so this one is by Rodney Asher, who is a documentarian, who you probably know best for making Room 237, which is the documentary about The Shining and the conspiracy theories about The Shining.
Oh,
and this is just basically a guy is being tested on his brain on a questionnaire, and then horrible things happen to him, which are cut in parallel. And I'm not going to say what those horrible things are, but it's simple enough and it's fun. It's like, it's kind of, again, the baseline of this. It's like, it's enjoyable.
And he had a movie at Sundance this year that I didn't see.
Yeah, I wanted to see that one,
Close to
honestly.
The Matrix. And it's got a funny ending. I like the ending.
Yeah.
And no one died in this one, technically.
Yeah, technically there are no deaths in this one.
R is for roulette. It's a pretty simple...
R is for roulette is our next one. This one is German. And this one I actually really like.
I like this one mainly because of the ending recontextualizing everything.
The ending recontextualizes a lot of it. It's got good noir photography and does a lot with a very simple premise, which you can presume from the title is it's people playing Russian roulette. And basically sort of, it's the tension of the moment. And I think that twist really makes it. Like, I also really like the really good black and white noir photography. Like,
right before you think, like, one guy's, like, became the villain, but turns out he's actually doing something very heroic.
Yeah, it flips a lot of their actions on you, and it does that in a good way. It's a good, solid short. Like, it's a short that I think could stand on its own outside of the ABCs of Death. Yeah. And that's kind of, like, the highest compliment I have for some of these. That, like, you could watch them outside of the context of this anthology film, and they would still stand up as a really good short.
Yeah, I very much like... R is very. I would put that it's above average. It's definitely above average. I liked it a fair amount. It's on my top 10 of this movie, but it barely cracked my top 10. Oh no, it barely missed it.
Yeah. Next is S is for Split, which is a big missed opportunity. This one is a frustrating missed opportunity for me. So basically the premise is there's a guy on a business trip and he's just talking to his wife, and then as he's talking to his wife, somebody breaks into the house. It's a very traditional home invasion story, but the hook is that the entire thing is done in split screen, which, okay, that's cool. I like that. I like good use of split screens. We've seen Wicked Wicked, which is a film that is entirely shot in split screen and was advertised under Duovision. I like a good split screen. I love like that kind of De Palma stuff. This was not particularly good. For starters, we have the return of needless edginess. Not really spoiling anything, but a baby dies in this. A baby is murdered. Yeah. Off screen, but still. It's very edgy. It's got a dumb twist.
Oh, the twist is so stupid.
And they don't do much with the split screen. They don't really do anything really creative with the split screen, which is my frustration. You have like a hook. You're basically making a gimmick film that you could use for some really creative filmmaking, and you don't really do anything with it.
Right. They really didn't do anything with it. There's so much room for creativity with the split screen and different perspectives, and like the husband on the phone, because there's sometimes like 3 screens where it's like the killer, the victim, and the husband's just standing there on the phone going, hello. I did not enjoy this one very much.
Speaking of ones you did not enjoy, T is for Torture Porn by Jen and Sylvia Soska.
Alright, so here are some things that I don't like in my movies. I do not like needless sexual assault and harassment. I do not like strobe lights. I hate strobe lights because they give me a headache. I think that's all you really need, but...
And this has all of them. This is just a lot of like people being lecherous creeps,
terrible characters,
creeps, and then
a tentacle comes
out. Then there's a woman with killer tentacles for where her crotch should be, and the entire ending is done with strobe lights. And yeah, I did not like this one. Yeah. This feels like something that would have fit in with the first film, where it's just needlessly shocking and like, look at us, we're so edgy. We have people being assholes to women. We're so shocking.
It's one of those movies where it's like, hey, it's okay if we have 5 minutes. If you have like a 5 minute short, and 4 minutes of that, it's just people being assholes,
extremely
and
misogynistic, abusive assholes.
And then 1 minute of revenge. Is it worth it? In this case, the revenge was so poorly executed that no, it wasn't.
Honestly, with those kind of like, with this kind of genre, basically, because this is basically a rape revenge. Basically. You need to do something that is actually interesting, and no. I really dislike the genre as a whole because most of them are just blind shock value that just takes a very real, very severe, very horrific issue and just reduces it down to gawk at this thing and be horrified by it.
It's a fake progressive thing where it's like, hey, look how...
It's the ultimate sort of sanded down progressivism for me.
Because
where it's just looking like you're saying something without actually saying it because you're too scared of actually saying it and maybe pissing people off.
Yeah, it's like, just because you have the revenge scene doesn't make it like progressive.
Yeah.
And I just hate those strobe lights. I'm sorry. Coming back to the strobe lights, I hate them.
Yeah, they gave me flashbacks to Ghost in the Shell 2017. I'm not going to talk about that movie. If I did, we'd be here for a couple more hours because I have a lot to say about that movie and none of it is good. Anyways, U is for Utopia.
I was just going to say, the first movie had at least 2 Nazi exploitation shorts. This one I disliked more. Anyway, Use for Utopia, I enjoyed somewhat.
Use for Utopia it's another dystopian one. And
another kind of Verhoeven-ish.
Verhoeven-ish. It's simple. It's literally about like a utopia. Everybody's like perfect as like a very specific physical standards of beauty, and those, if you don't meet that, you're punished by death. It's like, it's a better version of V from the first film. This one, I don't think it's much in terms of the story, and it's not that great, but it does have solid directing. This is done by Vincenzo Natali, who directed Cube. He also directed a bunch of episodes for Hannibal again. I know this keeps coming back to Hannibal as a franchise. I will eventually talk about that when we probably sometime soon get to the Hannibal Lecter movies. A lot of those will be just me finding excuses to talk about how much I love the series Hannibal, but we'll get to that. Anyways, this is like, it's not like much, but like it's good execution saving a meh-ish premise.
Yeah,
it's one of the best shot of all of them, I'd say.
It looks very professional, very simple. I have very little to say to add on to that, except I don't know if it's saying anything except
it's sort of a generic dystopia.
Black
honestly.
Mirror without much social commentary. Like, I could probably like really, if I took a pickaxe, can find like some social commentary in there about like obsessing for perfection or something. But
about like standards of beauty, but
exactly.
Again, X in the first one does that much better.
XXL, yeah.
Anyways, V is for Vacation by Jerome Sable. This is a found footage short about a guy calling his girlfriend while he's on vacation, and then his asshole friend reveals that they got up to some edgy hijinks involving some prostitutes, and then things take a turn for the murderous. This felt like a bad Eli Roth movie.
Oh, so an Eli Roth movie? Boom! No, I'm kidding. I like Hostel.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that, and I will judge your choices accordingly.
Eli Roth is someone who has disappointed me time and time again, but I still give him another chance just because I do like some of his movies.
This, however, is not Eli Roth. This is somebody trying to be Eli Roth. So it's just like really grotesquely awful characters, a lot of nudity, a lot of, again, like, oh, look, we have sex happening. That's shocking.
Right, like a naked prostitute. Oh my
stars and garters! I must fan myself. What is next? Blood?
I like the performance of like the douchebag friend who is just like
so cartoonishly over the top.
You could just see him trying so hard to be like, how can I make this edgier? And he's just like,
it must be edgier.
Things. He's like, okay, how can I make this shot? And I respect that performance. I really liked his performance of what he was trying to do.
But it's just so sledgehammer, look at us, we're shocking, that it just kind of comes off as ridiculous. It's just silly.
I didn't hate this one as much as you did, just because I thought the performances were funny.
It's just kind of, it's kind of the so bad it's good one. But it's still just kind of needlessly edgy. Anyways, next up, I'm very excited to say this. We have our first Sometimes They Come Back alumni with Steven Kostanski, director of our favorite Leprechaun movie, Leprechaun Returns, coming back for W is for Wish, which is the basic premise of this is that two kids who are playing with like 80s He-Man style toys are suddenly transported inside the world of those toys, which is a lot more messed up than you would think.
Yeah, it's like, what if He-Man was real? It's dark.
It's what if He-Man was real, but you didn't basically change anything about it, and the reality is, oh yeah, this kind of kid stuff is really messed up.
Yeah, it's like He-Man is a No, I really like if you took the role of He-Man and then all of a sudden made the characters realistic, like realistically violent.
A lot of this is like a lot of it feels like a showcase for practical effects.
It's great practical effects,
but it's excellent practical effects, and it's really good production design.
Very
like,
Dark Crystal, Labyrinth.
Very kind of like 80s dark fantasy, pushing it to its limits in terms of darkness, and I respect that. Like Kostanski has like a very developed visual style he's going for with that short, and like I respect it. It's fun.
It's another like kind of more or less one joke thing, but
it kind of exists for like the production design and effects, but the effects are so good that it justifies it.
It's got a good level of humor, just a good level of just the right amount of edginess. I love the screaming skeleton part.
Yeah.
Steven
Kostanski is 2 for 2.
2 for 2 of stuff I enjoy, even if we are just comparing it to the other stuff in these series.
Yeah.
But
Kostanski is our sort of first really successful alum.
Next we have
Axis for Xylophone, which is by Julian Maury and Alexandre Bastillo, who are part of the French New Extremity. They're known for Inside, which I need to watch at some point.
I didn't like this one very much just because it was I didn't get it. Is it really just as simple as a...
It has Beatrice Dalle in it, who is like a big name French actress who's shown up in a lot of stuff. She's been in Claire Denis' work. She was in Jim Jarmusch's Night on Earth. She's like...
Oh, I love that movie.
She's been in stuff by Michael Haneke.
You would think we only watch horror movies. I'm a huge Jarmusch fan. This one was just a woman kills a child and makes a xylophone
out of her because the child's playing the xylophone too loud.
Was that it? Was it because it was too loud?
I
I thought she was just like disturbed.
I don't know. It might just be the grandma's crazy and cut the kid's guts out and turn them into a xylophone. It feels like it's a payoff. It's a build up to like a shocking final reveal, but the final reveal is so cartoonish that it just doesn't land.
It's just who cares? It's like I don't know these characters. It's disturbing, sure, but like I just didn't care. I am not a huge fan of that one, but I do need to see Inside because I heard that was good.
Yeah, I heard that.
They did Leatherface interesting. I didn't see that one, but I've heard things about it. Why is for Youth? I like this one a lot.
This one's solid.
This is another social commentary.
Another social commentary Japanese one where it's got a lot of weird surreal imagery that is basically takes place in the head of a kid who's frustrated with like her
parents,
absentee parents, and is eventually the big reveal is that she's kind of considering suicide, and it ultimately becomes her kind of trying to accept that like she can't blame herself for like the faults of her parents. So this one's not, I don't think, as horror. It's just kind of like a surrealist short with a message.
Yeah, it's
sad.
And she's like talking about like her dad failed to save her dog, and then like it's all about the practical.
And it's sort of like the fail, like how their lives have like failed and fallen apart, and the ways that happens ends up being personified by like these practical effects that imagine all these problems as different monsters.
All these problems and metaphors are like actualized as like props.
It feels very Michel Gondry. Like it feels a lot like something Michel Gondry would have done.
And so I actually really like this one.
Yeah, I respect it a lot.
Last we have Z.
Last is Z is for Zygote. This one is about
the scariest one.
I'm gonna say this one off the bat. This one is very high up, not just because of production value, but because this one is the one that scared the shit out of me. This is fucking terrifying. So the plot of this is that is a pregnant woman who's abandoned by her husband, and then is sort of given this medicinal treatment by him, which is to keep the baby from being born. So it just follows her as this child grows up, still as part of her body that is not left her, that she is basically keeping this ever-growing child inside like her as a parasite. And it is this messed up, terrifying Cronenbergian body horror. And it is fucking terrifying. There is a payoff to it that I'm not going to say anything about, but it is brutal. It is horrific, and I think it really works. It so beautifully succeeds at scaring the shit out of you.
It's scary, it's sad, it's beautifully shot.
It's gonna stick in my nightmares, honestly.
It's amazingly scary. It's another one that if you want something kind of Miike-esque, like it's sort of like one of Miike's lower key movies, kind of like Gozu-ish, or what's one that's Over Your Dead Body?
Yeah,
one of those.
This is by Chris Nash, who seems to be less of a filmmaker and more of a sort of makeup effects and prosthetics guy. Seems to be friends with like sort of Kostansky's old group Astron 6. He did effects for... Actually, he literally did effects for Psycho Gorman, Kostansky's most recent movie. So this guy seems to be an effects guy. I want to see more. I want to see him direct more, because this is terrifying. This has that like very grungy 70s body horror feel. This feels a lot like The Brood or something that. Or It's Alive. It has that cool 70s body horror feel to it that before like body horror became very like clinical and sci-fi-ish in the 80s, where it was just raw and rough and grungy. And I really respect this. This one is absolutely, like, unquestionably for me, the scariest one of all of these shorts.
I agree, and that brings us to the end of ABCs of Death Part 2.
Which is definitely stronger, I would say, than the first one as a whole. The baseline for shorts, there's still some duds, but the baseline is much higher. There's a lot more diversity, I think, in the filmmakers, where we get more perspectives from around the world. We get more stuff that's not, like, corresponding to horror. I think the horror stuff we do get is scarier, and it just hits harder. But we are not done yet, because we have one last entry. ABCs of Death 2.5, which is not technically like a real movie, but the basic idea of this is that the producers decided, we're going to just submit 26 of the submitted shorts for M that didn't get into the previous ABCs of Death. These were the ones that were submitted but for the competition that we didn't pick. So basically, this is not actually an ABCs of Death movie, because its idea of the alphabet is just and these are basically sort of, there's like less name directors in this. This is going to be all sort of like more amateur directors, and we're also comparing them to M is for Masticate, the bath salts joke one, which is the one that was selected. These are ones that were not, and it's kind of interesting. So with that said, let's get started on the shorts, starting with M is for Magnetic Tape.
Yeah, so this one, Tim Rutherford and Cody Kennedy. This is one made by obvious B-movie film nerds. And
this is guys who like videotapes. So it's about a guy who runs a video store who's in-depth to the mob who have ninjas, and then he uses the powers of VHS tapes to become a VHS monster.
I was prepared to hate this one when I first saw it.
It felt like it was going to be...
I thought it was going to be just like stupid, hey, we don't know how to make a movie, but we
really
like
It felt like it was going to
movies.
be like kind of a lame 80s pastiche, but
I liked it, honestly.
It's enjoyable.
Fun. It's super fun.
It's definitely very like 80s nostalgia, but it's fun, and I do like the design of like the sort of VHS. The VHS kind of tokusatsu suit. It's very much kind of doing something like... It's doing something very much like tokusatsu, like sort of Ultraman or Kamen Rider. Like, it's very specific in what it's homaging as a subgenre.
So this one
or for Americans, Power Rangers.
This one surprised me. I actually really like this one, and we'll watch these guys. I'd watch anything else by them afterwards.
Well, you collect videotapes, Max. They're appealing to you personally.
They are. It's like, are they trying too hard to appeal to me? And that's what I thought at first. Like ninjas, I love ninjas. But I did like it.
Yeah. Next is M is for myusiophobia, the fear of giving birth. It's about it's a stop motion short. It's about a pregnant woman who's scared of giving birth and then is about to give birth, and
Cuts it out or something.
Cuts it out. Yeah, honestly, my thoughts on this one is it feels like a way lesser version of Z is for Zygo.
Way lesser. Yeah.
It feels like it's kind of doing the same thing that Chris Nash does in Z is for Zygo, but it doesn't have the same kind of chops or grotesque imagination as that one does.
Yeah, I mean, I like stop motion, but this is not as good as which was it?
D is for Deloused.
D is for Deloused.
This is not, and it's not as good as a stop motion short that happens later in this one. Honestly, we'll get to that one later.
M is for Mailbox.
This one's about a kid vampire who breaks into a house, and then there's like a twist, and I don't really have much to say on this one. It's just kind of all right.
Yeah, it's well enough shot. But yeah, it's just a vampire.
It's kind of there. It's kind of all building up to like what the final twist of it is.
It's like they all sat down, like, what are we gonna make? I don't know. Let's do a vampire tax people. Okay.
Yeah, it's not like the most creative. It's decently executed, but it is not really the most creative, I think, out of all these. There are much more creative. Next is M is for Make Believe, which is very, very pitch black comedy. So it's basically a dying man is sort of stranded alone in the woods, bleeding out from his injuries. His only real source of help are just two girls who show up and like think he's playing along with their fairy game. So they try to heal him with no knowledge of medicine, and it goes wrong. It's kind of, again, one specific joke, but it's not very long. It doesn't wear out its welcome, and it's just pitch black. It is just as dark humor as you possibly can get. Like,
yeah, it's kind of funny. It's not exceptionally well.
It's not like really well shot. It's not like but it gets a couple chuckles from me.
Yeah, it's like
in terms of just how pitch black it is. It's very morbid gallows humor.
Yeah, so I liked it enough-ish. I wouldn't watch it again, I don't think, but I do respect it enough. I do like it. In that way. M is for Malnutrition is...
M is for Malnutrition is a zombie movie.
Yeah,
on to the next one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
it's a very... okay, to say more on it, it's a woman in a building full of zombies searching for food. There's a ironic twist at the end. Look, if you've seen another zombie movie, you've seen this one, honestly. It's just a very, very typical kind of zombie short.
But very choppily edited.
Very choppily edited. Yeah, there's not really much to say about this. It's just very generic.
Yeah, yeah. M is for Manure. How do I explain it? There's like a farmer, abusive farmer.
There's like a dad who's a farmer who's an abusive father,
and
who kills people, who kills women, and then his son
finds his mother's
body and then rebuilds it using like manure, and then it becomes a poop zombie.
Poop zombie!
I cannot believe I just said the phrase, and then it becomes a poop zombie out loud.
And then zombie mom gets revenge as the son saves two more potential victims, I guess.
I don't think it really stands out to me. It's kind of like, again, that baseline, sort of, it's fine. But it does at least have a creative monster, good practical effects, and it's a much more interesting zombie movie than M is for Malnutrition.
The real Manure was...
There's a lot of zombie movies in 2.5, by the way. There's a bunch of zombie shorts.
Marauder.
M is for Marauder. This is like a parody of like a Mad Max car chase, but it's entirely done on tricycles. So it's just people riding tricycles doing like a Mad Max chase, and it's shot in black and white on like 16mm. I actually kind of like this one.
It's fun.
It's very goofy, but they actually shoot the action surprisingly well. They go as far with like the very silly premise as they possibly can. Honestly,
no,
I respect it a lot. It's fairly creative.
I was laughing through it most of it, like just on concept alone. Yeah, I would say it's pretty funny. It's as I just said, it feels like an old school edgy Smosh sketch. It's like
it's fun. I think it's funnier than Smosh ever was.
It's been forever since I've seen Smosh, but just one of those YouTube videos of like, hey, what if we did Mad Max on tricycles? And it's funny.
But it's also shot on 16mm black and white, so it has like a distinct visual style. It kind of is like a very punkish visual style, which I'll always appreciate that.
It had like instead of the doof warrior, there's like someone with I forget
a boombox. It's just somebody riding around on a tricycle with a boombox.
So yeah, fun enough. M is for Mariachi.
Mariachis kill people. That's at a death metal concert. That's basically it.
There was the only thing I would really recommend about this is I just think the final image is funny of after murdering an entire crowd of heavy metal enthusiasts and rock bands, a mariachi band just starts playing over.
It's an excuse for one silly final image.
Yeah, I mean, it was short enough that did piss me off, but
yeah.
M is for marriage.
M is for marriage. I
like
actually kind of like this one. It's basically a marriage counselor trying to help a woman through like her anger issues with her husband, and basically what he does is he forces those issues to show up as physical trauma on the body. So it's kind of cool. It's definitely very low rent. I was a little confused by it at points, but it's got creative editing. It's well done, and it does kind of get that Cronenberg 80s horror feel right. It's got that very clinical, weird body horror feel that you get with something like a Dead Ringers or a Videodrome, and I really appreciate that. They nailed that feel.
It was honestly actually probably my favorite of the 2.5. I did enjoy
it's one of my favorites at 2.5.
That's good. And speaking of one of my favorites, I actually really liked, I don't think you liked this as much as I did, but the next one, M is for Martyr, which is, I liked it mainly because I really just liked the music in it. I think
it's
it
got
had
good
a really,
music.
really good score, and it was...
I don't actually remember as much about this one, honestly. I'm kind of having what you had with Ours for a Move, where it's like, I don't completely remember this one.
This was the guy who was like, put on a cross, and people every day would come and just like torture him for their sins, and he did it willingly. And
oh yeah, I remember this one though. It's actually pretty solid, honestly. It's definitely low rent, but they do have like a creative premise for it. Like I think, and the music's really good.
Yeah, no, I actually really I did enjoy that one. I didn't like it at like the first like minute, but then eventually
once it catches on, it kind of works.
Right. It's got like a kind of a funny look at like the martyr complex, where it's just like people are torturing him and they're making jokes with each other. I don't know. I liked it.
Next is M is for Matador. This one I actually really like too. It's basically like a matador serial killer who is basically like just kidnapping people, forcing them to like wear a bullhead and then fight him to the death. And it's kind of making a little bit of a point of like the horrors of bullfighting, but it does it as like kind of a fun slasher movie. Like it's nicely stylized. It doesn't wear out its welcome. It's enjoyable.
Yeah,
it's like a solid little kind of very stylized slasher movie short.
If you like to see someone dress someone up as Matador, as a
Minotaur, basically,
and play a sadistic
if you want to see a Minotaur fight a psychopathic murderous Matador, this is the short for you.
Yeah, and
but yeah, it's pretty good.
Oh, she directed the Purge a few episodes of the Purge TV show.
Apparently she does a bunch of work with Blumhouse. Okay.
M is for Meat is another one of my favorites.
M is for Meat. I really like this one. This is the other really creepy stop motion short I was alluding to. This one's like a little bit cleaner than D is for the Lost, because this one has like a much more minimalist stylized kind of feel, where it's just about like meat people. It's like people made out of meat, and they might have been actually animated with real food, and then sort of somebody's meal they're eating kind of comes alive. And it's very simple, but the simplicity of its animation style with like these very minimalist sets and like this very beautifully arranged kind of stop motion really works for me. It's like definitely that creepy. If like D is for Deloused is something you'd find on a VHS in somebody's basement that is like that you should not be seeing, M is for Me is like something you would find in like the mansion of like a eccentric art collector who might be secretly a serial killer.
And Hannibal Lecter's video
you'd find this in Hannibal Lecter's video collection instead of D is for Deloused, which you'd probably find on a shelf next to the ring tape. It's still using stop motion for very creepy ends, but it's doing something very different with how it creeps you out. And it's effective. It's very creepy. I really like this one.
Did you explain what it was about?
Yeah, it's about like a person gets eaten.
Well, it's like it's like a restaurant where it's like there's these.
It's a restaurant where the food eats you.
Right. The waiters are meat people, and they just like cut off parts of their face and feed themselves to this mouth blob.
Yeah. It's creepy. It's very creepy.
I can't explain it without you.
I can't really explain it because it's another very like weird, not plot based one, but it's very good, effective, creepy imagery, and beautiful stop-motion animation.
And the director has a fantastic name.
Wolfgang Matzel.
Fantastic.
That's a great name.
Perfect name. Next we have M is for Mermaid. Not a huge fan of this one.
No. This one felt like an excuse to just have nudity. Like,
yeah, I guess.
This one felt like this one felt like the filmmakers were like, we just really want to have a naked woman in our movie. Where it's about like two guys who catch a mermaid and then they eat it. Well, that's it.
I was very excited for this one because last Halloween or last October I saw a Russian horror film called The Mermaid, and I thought it was going to be about Killer Mermaid because that was what was on the cover. It was more just like a ghost that lived around water, and it was disappointing. I'm like, now I get a real Killer Mermaid movie.
And you didn't.
Not really.
Have you watched The Lure? The Lure isn't
that's good.
The Lure isn't like a straightforward horror film. It's more like a weird horror musical. It's a lot closer to something like Rocky Horror or Phantom of the Paradise. But that one's got killer mermaids in it, and it's pretty good.
I'll check that one out.
Good soundtrack too. Highly recommend.
M is for Merry Christmas.
M is for Merry Christmas. I like the premise of it.
The chemistry between Krampus and his
captive are fun. So this is basically about the Krampus, with the help of someone he's taken captive, working through his frustrations with Santa Claus and deciding to eventually turn his life around.
Yeah, it's not
great, but there's a couple really good moments of like dry British comedy. I don't know if this is British, honestly.
I don't know.
It could be British, could be Australian, I don't know. But it has that kind of good... It has some good moments of humor. It just kind of goes on a little too long. It's a little too slow with too much downtime.
I agree. It should have been tighter. The effects, the makeup wasn't fantastic, but the chemistry was decent.
Yeah. And next we have a segment about a man who poops through his belly button.
Oh yeah, I don't like this one.
Yeah, M is for Mess, which is about a man who poops through his belly button, falls in love with a poop fetishist, and then kills himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, this one is just very weird, gross out. I don't know if I felt it. Like, it just felt, again, kind of very shock value.
Poop out of your belly button.
Poop out of your belly button. We'll be getting back to bodily fluids later in this film, and it's not a good sign when I have to say that this is the better one of the bodily fluid films in this. We'll get to that. Next is M is for Messiah.
You have to remind me, what happened in this one?
This is like a lady who was kidnapped by a cult, and then they all killed themselves, and then the apocalypse happened.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I remember. This had a Wilhelm scream.
It had a Wilhelm scream. I'll give them that.
And the moon exploded. And
the moon explodes.
It was...
I like when we're talking about the moon exploding as it's like just no big deal. I don't know, this one didn't really... Again, it's very baseline. It's technically fine, but I don't think it's that good or that...
Interesting.
Original.
Or, yeah.
M is for Mind Meld is the next one.
Not to be confused with Mind Games or whatever it was called.
H is for Head Games.
H is for Head Games, that's it. A man who feels no pain.
Oh yeah, this one, it's like, this one's based all around a twist. So it's just like a guy in a room who keeps doing horrible, mutilating things to his body and just feeling no pain with it as scientists watch. Well, in the next room over, there's a guy who's just feeling all of his pain. It's kind of like a build-up to that twist. It just kind of takes a little too long to get there.
Yeah, but it's a clever idea. I do like the idea a lot.
It's a fun idea.
And if it wasn't a gotcha ending, like a punchline ending, I think it would have been stronger. And if it was clear, I don't know if I didn't read the premise afterwards. I don't know if I would have totally understood what was happening. I probably would have gotten it, but it could have been clearer.
Next is M is for Miracle.
Yeah, this one.
This one's about a guy who finds a magic box that turns bad things you put in it into good things, but then when you take them out, it makes them worse.
Yep.
It does what it needs to with the premise, honestly.
Another one that was a tiny bit confusing.
It was a little bit confusing, but there's some decent photography in it. Like, there's some good moments in it.
And it's a cool idea. Like,
it's kind of a fun idea. They do what they can.
A monkey's paw, but different enough where it's like...
I don't think it's great, but I'd say it's above average.
It could make for a really solid feature or like a sequel short.
Yeah. Next is M is for Mobile, which is it's about a man who's sort of holding another guy captive and then is getting messages on how to torture this guy and basically mutilate him. And this builds up to an ending I don't want to spoil, because the ending is, out of all the one punchline shorts, this is probably I don't know if it's the best one.
It's the funniest one.
But it's got one of the funniest punchlines. It's got a punchline to it that you don't even know it's going to be a comedy short until the end, where this just great punchline comes out of nowhere, and it's just a good laugh. Like, and when you realize where it's going, it kind of just hits you nicely. I appreciate it's kind of all made by the ending. This one.
Yeah, the ending is so dark, so funny.
Yeah. M is for Mom.
This one was sad. This was like another one that's sympathetic to zombies. It's like
another very sympathetic to zombies one, where it's about a zombie kid who just wants to be friends with a human kid in the middle of the zombie apocalypse. And then
mom kills
the kid's mom, who is just like a traditional like zombie movie survivor, just kills the zombie. It's sad. It's like, I don't think it's as it kind of goes for what O's for Ochlocracy goes for. I don't think it's as creative or as much of a standout as O's for Ochlocracy is, but it's pretty. It's good. It's well shot. It's sad. You feel for this little zombie kid. Like, it's well done.
Next we have we're
going
through these.
M is for Moonstruck, which has probably one of the most interesting animation styles out of any of the animated ones, where it's entirely done with paper puppets.
Yeah, I like this one a fair amount. And
the story's kind of like generic, and I didn't really follow what the story is. There's a guy who's visiting a grave, and then a woman who has a lover, and I didn't really follow what was going on. But the animation style is very creative. Uses a lot for little. You don't usually see animation that uses a lot of like focus changes or like using focus as a tool, but they do that, which is good. Good sound design. There's a scene in a graveyard that has a lot of horror movie references. So just like pause the movie and see which one of them you get. There's some fun in that, because all the gravestones have names of different like slasher movie
Devin
killers.
Myers and whatnot. I like this one. I understood more. That's what was. I understood what was happening.
Yeah, I was confused by it, but it's very creative. It's got a very unique and creative style of animation.
Right. Very fun to watch. I would recommend that one.
N is for Mormon missionaries. This one was for something that had Mormon missionaries in the title. This should have been more fun than it was, honestly.
Yeah, this one was
basically two Mormons enter a woman's house, kind of torture her, and then
the
twist kill her. But then the twist is the woman has actually killed the Mormons, and she has schizophrenia.
Did that really add anything though? Like,
it just felt very edgy. Like, oh look, we're shocking. We have mental illness.
Well, I was just like, when I want a twist, I want to like recontextualize everything, and this really didn't. It was just like, oh, so people are still getting murdered. It's the only difference is it's
not the people you thought were getting murdered.
Right, they're the victim. I don't know. It didn't really. To me, I was just like, oh no. Anyway, like it's a.
Yeah, it's kind of there. I thought it was gonna be wackier than it was.
Right. It was Mormons on a mission. It could be. It
was Mormon missionaries. You could have done a lot with that.
Right. Knocking on your door saying, "Have you heard the word of Jesus Christ?" And you can go from there. But instead, they're like, murder.
Next is M is for Mother.
People
get attacked by a spider in this, and that's basically the entire show.
I was prepared to love this because this has one of the scariest moments in any of these movies where
there's a reveal of a giant spider where it's creepy, and then they show the CGI.
Right. Well, like she walks into the room and she's like, "Oh, you killed this big spider," and then there's this scared girl and she says like, "Don't turn around," and then you see just in the background these like
this
long
leg pulling back
right from out,
which is a great scare. It's a great scare, and then the rest of it can't really live up to it.
It's just like it needs to be longer. It has to have
more suspense.
More suspense, because the suspense that they had was fantastic.
But then it kind of comes very quickly to an end. It feels like it ends prematurely.
Right, like she goes to close the window, and you need like 2 more minutes of building up. You need more
suspense, and it just ends too quickly.
Yeah, it's like once you get this great tension, then it's just like done.
Yeah.
So it could have been one of my favorites, but I didn't.
Oh God, I've seen what two are next. First is M is for Muff, which is it's like set in the 1920s. An old man like hires basically a plus size prostitute to service him, and then the prostitute gets her head cut off by a ceiling fan, and then her crotch falls in his face, and the man is asphyxiated.
This would be a great double feature with XXL. Like one is body shame, is like what body shaming does to you. The other one
is kind of body shame. Is body shame. The other one feels like a joke from a Leprechaun movie. Let's be honest, and I don't mean that as a compliment.
I mean, like, Yeah, the joke was, yo mama's so fat, she suffocated your grandpa to death. It's like, oh, well, that's...
With her crotch.
With her crotch.
It's not particularly charming. At the very least, you can say it has, like, some attempts at a visual style.
Yeah. Moving on.
Oh, God.
M is for munging.
Oh, God.
I did not know what this means.
I don't know what this means. I don't want to look it up. I don't want this in my fucking search history. This is about two people. Two people, necrophilia, bodily fluids. Two people do things with a corpse that they shouldn't do with a corpse. That's all I'm going to say. This is the one that makes me physically angry because this is the only one of these movies that and this is the first time we've ever had something on this show that has made me physically feel sick. This made me sick.
You know,
and it's just like
they're probably proud of that. Like that.
Probably.
That's what they're trying to do. You know, they.
But it's just like, it's the ultimatum. It is the final boss of meaningless shock value. It is just, it's shot like shit. Basically, nothing happens in it, but it is just throwing the most fucked up, obscene thing at you just to get a rise out of you. And it got a rise out of me because I felt like I wanted to vomit when I saw this. It just felt so lazy and just cheap. Like, it's just the most cheap out, gross shock. Like, it just, ew. It makes me feel dirty and wrong for even having seen it. This one pissed me off.
I will say, this is one of the best ones in terms of doing what it set out to do. What they set out to do, though,
what they set out to do, it should be legally prosecutable.
Oh, yikes. Good Australia.
Like, what the... Okay. I'm joking. I'm joking. But seriously, this one, I did not like this one. I really did not like this one.
Yeah, this one...
Like, I like my horror to have some thought and subtlety and suspense to its scares, and not just basically throw marinara sauce at you. And this threw rotten marinara sauce at me. It's like trying blindly, like, all we need for horror is just to make you feel sick. It's like, and that's insulting to me. That's insulting to me for a genre that relies so much on subtlety and creativity that it can kind of get away with just throwing whatever gross bullshit you can out there. It just, I don't like it. It's my least favorite kind of horror.
It's the equivalent of having a business that just walks up to you and punches you in the stomach and say, hey, that's what we were trying to do the whole time, just give you pain. You're like, well, you succeeded.
Well, you succeeded, but I don't know what you were doing in the first place.
Last we have M is for Mutant.
M is for Mutants.
A good start because it had a really cool effect.
It was all done as a tracking shot.
Right, it's like these...
It's kind of cool stop motion monsters.
A disease that makes bat things come out of your mouth. It's a cool effect. And then it just went on a little bit.
It just kind of meandered. There was a guy in an Elvis costume and then...
Yeah, it just kind of just stood around there for a while.
Some people shot a bunch of shotguns at things.
I was getting Birdemic vibes.
Yeah, I was getting some Birdemic vibes with the green screening, and it kind of was there. It went on a bit too long. Like, I guess it existed.
And that's how we ended the
series.
And
that's how we end the ABCs of Death. With the resounding conclusion of it existed. Now, on our previous episodes, we have ranked all the films in our series in order. However, we are not going to do that this episode because we have 78 movies. So what we are instead going to do is we have each ranked our bottom 10 shorts and our top 10 shorts. And we are going to start trading off and seeing what made each of ours, starting with a bottom 10. Max, what is your 10th least favorite short?
Malnutrition, the zombie one.
Okay.
I didn't like the editing. I found it very boring. I was expecting more zombie stuff. It was just the most obvious one you could have done for a short. Didn't care for any of it. Characters were boring. That's it.
Yeah. Mine would be M is for miscarriage. It's just like, it's like 30 seconds long. You could have put more work into it. And is it really that shocking? Like, it was just kind of blind shock value, but it was just also kind of nothing. It was the most nothing of all the nothing shorts. And I felt I needed at least one space on there for, like, the nothing.
I wrestled with that one. I put that one kind of like, you know, I like that one just as much as I didn't like it just because of how short it was. You know, I disliked it more, but, you know, just because of how short it was so, like, middle of the road that didn't break my bomb 10. But it's definitely not good. I didn't like it. Next for me is N2, which was from part 2. which was called blah blah blah.
N is for Nexus.
Nexus. Yeah, I was not a big fan of this one.
Yeah, it's kind of like not much going on. My number 9 is V is for Vacation. I do not like that kind of pseudo Eli Roth style of horror at all. So this was like anathema to me. I don't know why I've been using anathema a lot. I just really like that word, but this was like something that did not click with me. If anything, it aggressively anti-clicked with me.
Next, we have Y is for Young Buck.
Yeah.
Pedophile gets what he deserves. That's the end.
Yeah, kind of a nothing.
Whatever. Just gross and then not very satisfying.
Yeah. Mine is E is for Exterminate. Angela Bass, I like you as an actress. You're really good in May, but yeah, this ain't it. That's all I have to say.
Ain't here, Chief. Next we have E is for Equilibrium. Is my number 7. Just a Winby shopping beer commercial.
Yeah, very. That one almost made my bottom 10, honestly. Actually, in retrospect, I'm thinking about it. We'll get back to that later. My number 7 is S is for Speed. Again, Tarantino knockoff. Just like bad Robert Rodriguez. Like, it's just. And the ending is just like, oh, this was all supposed to be a serious metaphor for drug addiction. Like, no, you can't pull that shit on me. You can't pull that shit when you've basically been just doing Mad Max with less production value and more breasts and profanity. You can't pull that shit at the last minute. Like, that doesn't work.
For me, my number 6 is I is for Ingrown. I went to a high school where slam poetry was very popular. And having slam poetry over spousal abuse / murder, yeah, it's just too pretentious for me. You know, I've heard good slam poetry. I've heard bad slam poetry. This was not very good for me.
Yeah. Originally, my original number 6 was going to be W is for WTF, but knowing what I know about the director's death, I don't want to put it on there. It feels wrong for me to put it on there. Since you did bring it up, though, I think my number 6 does actually go to I is for Ingrown. It's just shitty treatment of a real social issue in a way that it feels like you're more exploiting it to look artsy than you are actually saying something about it. That will eternally piss me off.
Right, look how artsy this terrible thing is.
Look how artsy this horrific thing
beautiful
is. Aren't we great filmmakers?
Yeah,
it just annoys. That urge just annoys me.
Same people who like just celebrate serial killer documentaries like of real people. Anyway, M is for Mess is my next one. Belly button pooping is not funny to me. Poop is funny, but not when it's from the belly button. And I didn't get what was happening, and it was less gross as it was just stupid.
Yeah.
It was worse than fart for me.
My number 5 is Z is for Zetsumetsu, which is probably my least favorite of all the quote-unquote weird Japanese ones. Like,
yeah.
This one is partially on there because, yeah, I didn't understand what's happening, and it's like attempts at shock value for me were just kind of pathetic. I didn't really understand what he was trying to say as social commentary. Also, if you're going to steal from Seijun Suzuki, you better not miss. You're stealing from one of my favorite filmmakers. If you do it bad, I'm going to take notice. And you did it bad. You did it real bad.
Next we have Munging.
We'll get back to that.
Necrophilia with no characters or story, or message or anything, and a stupid ending. So yeah, I didn't like that one. I got very little positive to say about it, except for maybe some good coloring of it. I don't know.
My number 4 is T is for torture porn. Yeah, it's all in the title. It's just, it's not. I don't think it's as smart as it's trying to think it is. It just feels like it's trying to look like it's progressive, but in doing so, I think it hurts any actual like kind of progressive cause or message it's trying to say, because it's just more concerned about the appearance of it than it is actually really saying much of anything besides being
I'm going to tell you,
bad to women is bad.
I was shocked that this was made by female directors.
Yeah, it feels.
It's shocking to me.
Institutionalized misogyny is, I think, a thing, but on today's show, we discuss institutionalized misogyny, the Israel-Palestine debate, and abortion.
2 white guys, Quinn and Max, discussing these issues that are very much living in America.
Please ignore anything we say on this. We do not know what the fuck we're talking about.
Number 3 for me is H. For
hydroelectric diffusion.
I don't like furry Nazi porn stuff.
Yeah.
Props to the effects, practical effects. Negative props for everything else.
Yeah.
You had a style, you went for it. I didn't very much enjoy it.
Yeah. My three is for Ellis for Libido. Timo, you have been saved only because I like your other movies, but this is real bad. Like, it's so low because of the disappointment of a filmmaker I really like and really respect doing something this frustrating.
It's technically one of the better ones. It looks like a real movie.
But it just what it's doing and how it's shock value.
Yeah.
I'm very glad that at this point in his career, he seems to have moved on to like much more clever and fully developed stuff. Honestly, this seems like something he needed to get out of his system. Just kind of get it out of his system before he started making a lot better work with stuff like
Night Comes For Us.
With stuff like Night Comes For Us, and especially Safe Haven. But it's still not great. And I still really, really like him as a filmmaker, though.
It didn't make my bottom 10, and that might just because it looked like a real movie, and also I just really
and you
don't
just
want to
really
give
like
it to
him.
Timo. It might just be that. That's why they cracked my bottom 10.
Yeah, I still really like him, but yeah, I don't know what his thought process was on that. Like, it doesn't change how I feel about him as a filmmaker. It's just everybody kind of has their mistakes, and this was a mistake.
Next for me, number 2 is Z for
Zetsumetsu?
Zetsumetsu, that's how you pronounce it. You said a lot about it. Yeah, I mean, you know, I love Doctor Strangelove. I didn't love this version of, I don't know what it was. I don't know what they were saying. I wasn't interested. My mind was wandering. It was shock value for shock value's sake, and then moving on.
Yeah. My number 2 is H is for hydroelectric diffusion. Look, I'm not comfortable with the furry shit, but I can understand it. The Nazi shit is what puts... The Nazi death porn shit is what puts it over the top for me. This is like pure just... They at least have a style, but it's just blank shock value of like, this is just weird shit we're throwing at you, and it's like, fine. I don't mean any offense to furries. If and you watch this show and you listen, I don't mean any offense to you, but to paraphrase the dead Kennedys, Nazi furries fuck off.
Like, okay, I don't get furries, but you know,
they seem
in your
mostly
own,
harmless. Like they seem mostly harmless, like they're doing their own thing. It's like, I don't understand it, but you do you. Except for the Nazis. Nazis can go piss the fuck off.
I agree. My least favorite is torture porn.
Oh yeah.
That one had the most visceral reaction of annoyance from me.
Mine also had the most visceral reaction. Emma's for Munging is the only one that made me feel like I wanted to throw up. It's all the fucking bad shock value, no point to it. We're just gonna throw upsetting shit at you kind of ideas, but it doesn't have any of the quality or thought of any others. It's just so slapdash in terms of, yeah, here are people doing horrible sexual things to a corpse. Be disgusted. And no, at least have some subtlety and thought and care put into your horror beyond just going to the lowest common denominator to shock people. That annoys me.
I agree, but now we're going on to our top 10.
Our top 10, all right.
You first or me first?
I'll go first this time since you went first on that. My number 10 is O is for Orgasm. I question where to put this because I really respect this in terms of filmmaking. It's very creatively made. However, I think the thing that puts it at the bottom below all the others is that it's kind of a short that you can't really extract from the context of the film. It kind of has to be part of ABCs of Death, whereas a lot of the others on my list are ones you could watch outside of the context.
Right. For me, it's Falling is number 10. Yeah. This one, it definitely stood out as a unique one in the series. It was interesting, well acted, very sad. Your turn, 9.
I debated about 9. I almost put in M is for Marriage from 2.5, but I ended up going with R is for Roulette. It's like, it's a simple premise, well executed, great final twist that recontextualizes everything. I love that very noirish photography. Like, pretty good. Like a very good kind of serious short film.
My number 9 is X is for XXL. Disturbing. One of the few that like legitimately disturbed me and didn't just like annoy me in terms of its content. I liked XXL a lot.
Yeah. My number 8 is another one with like disturbing content. It's J is for Jesus. Like, I kind of like that a little more than XXL because XXL is like a very serious horror film. J is for Jesus is kind of doing a little more pulp horror as social commentary with those very Saw and Hellraiser elements. I think it's bringing attention to like what I think is a really actually important issue that doesn't get as talked about in terms of horror, and I think it's a good way of dramatizing the horrors of a real world event into a horror film without making it feel like it's being salacious or exploitative. It feels like it has a very good point. It gets to it. I really like the makeup effects in it. It's really interesting.
My number 8 is D is for Dogfight. All for a good dog gets revenge movie. Not just a dog revenge movie where someone gets revenge for their dog, but the actual dog gets revenge.
Yes.
All for that. Very well edited, very stylized. Very good. I like this one.
Actually, my number 7 is actually D is for Dogfight too. I think it's a very well-made film. I think it's got a good ending. It has a very good dog. A very good boy. A very good boy who deserves treats.
The dog's name was Buddy, like my old dog.
Yep.
Number 6 is also D. This one is D is for Deloused. Disturbing, scary. Love stop motion. It's probably my favorite stop motion. It's my favorite stop motion one, but I really liked it.
Oh yeah. Number 6 for me is I is for Inheritance. I like the chaotic kind of Sam Raimi feel of this one. I love the premise. Great production design and directing. I need to see more of Eric Matty's films. I want to see more. This did a good thing for me where it made me want to see more the director's made. I want to go out of my way now to see what kind of other stuff this guy makes because I enjoyed this enough.
My next one is... I'll maybe change this one out. Or actually, no, I like this one. Nuptials.
Yeah.
I really like this one. It's simple, it's funny. I love Shudder. Watch this one.
My number 5 is M is for Meat. Good stop motion. Felt very cursed in a very classy way. Like, beautiful production design and creepy. Great sound design, too. That's kind of a universal between the two stop motions that show up on my top 10 list. Amazing sound design.
The best one, my number 5 is the best one from part 1. It's Q. It's Quack. Okay. It's funny. I love the comedy. I love the self-deprecating humor. But without being like obnoxiously self-deprecating that a lot of people get into, like, oh, I'm so stupid. No, this one was smart. I like this one.
Number 4 for me is D is for Deloused. Again, this is my favorite of the stop motion animation. Again, it really reminds me of the Brothers Quay's work, which is a very high compliment because they're like fairly well regarded in terms of art house circles, and this one creeped me out. Beautiful, terrifying stop motion, great set design, great body horror, like, generally feels like something you should not be watching. One of the scariest.
My next one's going to be a bit of an upset. I put Marriage, sorry.
Oh! Ooh, that one's good. I'm just going to say in advance, that one's an honorary 11.
Marriage was good. I loved the ending, and I loved all the body horror, and I loved the acting. It was all very well done.
Feels very good, Cronenberg. I hesitated on putting that on there. Consider that one an honorary 11. My number 3 is B is for Badger. Again, it's just kind of biased because I like the creator, good sense of humor, but that very dry British humor really appeals to me.
My next one is number 3. O is for Okilarchy, whatever.
Oculocracy.
The zombie judgment one. Hilarious, creative. I really like this one.
Oh yeah. My number 2, I was torn between which one I wanted to go with, because one I think is more creative, one is more effective. I think my number 2 ended up being O is for Oculocracy. That is one of the two that I could just watch multiple times outside of the context of ABCs of Death as just a really good short film. And it is funny, it is extremely creative, it's a great take on zombie mythos. It narrowly missed being my number 1. In retrospect, it might, in thinking about it later, it may overtake it as my number 1. But that one's excellent. It's superb.
My top 2 are also tied.
Yeah.
Just for the sake of what I originally put, it's probably switched now, but I put number 2, which is probably number 1, is Z for Zygote. It's funny that the first movie ended on a kind of a dud. Third movie kind of ended on a meh, kind of forgettable. This one ended on a, like, the best one.
Highlight.
It's super scary, super good, well acted, disturbing, amazing. Love this one.
Yeah, my number 1 is actually Z is for Zygote. Like, I was torn, because O is for Oculocracy is more creative, it's more eclectic, but Z is for Zygote is the best one because it so intensely succeeds at what it's trying to do. And what it's trying to do is scare the living shit out of you.
And also,
Z is for Zygote is the only one of these movies that's stuck in my dreams, that is fucking scarring, and in a good way, in a very excellent horror way.
Right.
I would generally say this short is better than anything in either the Leprechaun or Children of the Corn franchise. As far as it stands now, Z is for Zygote is my favorite thing I've seen as of yet as part of this podcast.
This is funny. We were saying this. We were talking about M is for mungning, whatever it's called, as like the only one to make you feel sick. No, this one
makes you feel sick, but it's in a very good way.
Yeah,
it's in a way where it's very
smart,
beautifully calculated, thought through body horror that is excellent.
My number one is Badger. I like simple comedy.
Badger's great.
It's so simple, but I laughed the whole time. I
like the running gag about him constantly just not wanting to be compared to David Attenborough.
I mean,
nobody bring up David Attenborough.
Yeah, Z is like on a technical level, on like a cinematic level, if we're going with that word. It's more full. It's more disturbing, but and it's probably more memorable. But I don't know. When I saw Badger, I was just like, hi, I like this one's my favorite.
Yeah. And anyways, that is the ABCs of Death. I think I would genuinely say that this episode has produced what I would say my first largely full-throated recommendation of this show is. I would say ABCs of Death 2 is a good movie. ABCs of Death 2 is pretty consistent. It's got kind of, for me, pretty much all the real standouts in it. With ABCs of Death 2, you get, like, probably my favorites are, like, D is for Delouse, B is for Badger. Plus, you get to get scared the shit out of you by Z is for Zygote, and O is for Ochlocracy, which is an incredibly creative take on zombie movies. It reminded me a lot of One Cut of the Dead, honestly.
Yeah.
That's another movie recommendation for you.
Watch
If
that.
you haven't seen it yet, watch One Cut of the Dead. Even if you're not a horror fan, watch One Cut of the Dead. It's something that will really stand out to you.
If you just like watching movies about filmmakers, it's so fun.
It's a great comedy because basically the entire first half of that movie is only going to make sense to you when you watch the second half and realize that every single weird thing that happens in the first half of that movie is because of a gag that they've secretly been setting up and you didn't notice. It is ingenious. It is one of the most beautifully, creatively constructive comedies I've seen in a very long time. It is a must-watch.
Yeah, please watch that.
Also watch ABCs of Death too, because I got sidetracked.
Well, with the ABCs of Death, so I put in my bottom list, from part 1, we have 4 movies from part 1, 3 from part 3, and 3 from part 2. But in our best, we have 5 from part 2 as the best, 4 from part 1, and 1 from part 3. So
my top 10
list is part 2 is the best.
My top 10 is there are 7 from part 2 in my top 10, 2 from part 1 and 1 from part 2.5. My bottom 10, however, is at least 7 are from 1. So my recommendation would be skip 1, but watch some highlights from it. Watch 2. 2.5 you don't really need to do, but 2 is a must.
We should really quickly say, we don't think that the M they picked for 2.2 was the right one. We would have probably gone with
I would have gone with M is for me.
Meat
or man. But I think since this is a group decision, M is for Marriage. M is for Marriage should have been in there. Because, like, M is for Masticate is fine. It's, like, a decent little short with, like, a bunch. But there are some ones in 2.5 that are just way more creative and more intense than I think the one we got. Like, I think they got the decision wrong. And, like, they kind of went for the joke one when there are some ones that really work as, like, either horror or just very clever filmmaking.
So that thus concludes the ABCs of Death series, trilogy-ish.
We will be returning to anthology sometime in the future because, I mean, we're definitely going to do the VHS movies.
It's some of my favorites.
I cannot wait to talk about the VHS movies. Again, VHS is not to spoil anything. VHS is going to be another franchise where the second installment is the strongest because VHS 2... And VHS 2, since that comes out after ABC's Death 1, that is going to feature the Timo redemption, where he just turns around from making Alice for Libido and then makes one of the scariest segments that's ever been in an anthology film, but we'll discuss Safe Haven when we get to it. There's going to be a huge chunk of that episode that's just going to be us gushing over how good Safe Haven is.
Timo, we love you. Follow us on Twitter.
Also, that applies to all of you. Follow us on Twitter. Follow the podcast on YouTube. We're going to try eventually, once we get the money, to start uploading on Apple Podcasts and the like. We will be back in 2 weeks with what will most likely be Saw. Our first big franchise, and we get to talk about a franchise that began as a relatively subtle but intense police procedural horror mystery, and then descended it into everyone's favorite extremely gory soap opera starring John Kramer and his 70 billion apprentices.
I'm Team Hoffman all the way.
Oh my god, we will discuss Hoffman when we get to it. We will discuss the sequel that is entirely a metaphor for the U.S. healthcare system, the various different recent reboots of it, and we will be talking about a movie that is actually in theaters next week, because we will be talking about Spiral.
Which we are seeing in 2 hours from now.
Absolutely. 2 hours from now, which is in the past for all of you. Look, we don't have enough time to get into how time works for us. Anyways, thank you so much for listening, and have a great day.